Good evening, everyone. I would like to begin the evening portion of tonight's council meeting. I'd like to start with an Indigenous territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Shonanton people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And I'd like to add my own comments to the land acknowledgement. I think that in addition to our land acknowledgements, it's also important to challenge the way we think and how we reflect upon the land that we live on. And my personal story is my family came in 1846 and farmed land in the Markdale area. And as the family member who collects family stories, I was always very proud of our family history. I still am, but now I view it differently. The land that we farmed was not ours. The water that my relatives put mills on was not ours, but it appeared that way. We were farmers. We were operating water mills, etc. So it poses a different reflection on who we are in my family and the land that we claimed. So I always invite people to reflect on where they came from and what their family story is and how it impacted the land. So thank you. At the beginning of this council meeting, we paused to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. I also would like to share that International Day of Persons with Disabilities is December 3rd. Each year, International Day of Persons with Disabilities is recognized on December 3rd, a day for celebration and reflection. It's an opportunity to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities and to recognize the political, social, economic, and cultural contributions of disabled people. As we mark this day, the city reaffirms its commitment to the long-term work of creating an inclusive and accessible community where everyone can participate, contribute, belong, and thrive. To support ongoing learning and conversation, we're also collaborating with Waterloo Public Library on a free screening of Crip Camp, an Oscar-nominated documentary about a summer camp for disabled teenagers that helped launch the disability rights movement. You can register on the Waterloo Public Library website, wpl.ca, for the free screening taking place on December 4th, and I hope you'll join us. Council, is there a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. We would like to begin this evening with our staff report, the Get Ready Benchmarking and Implementation Plan.
Good evening, Council. I'm very honored and glad to be presenting the much-anticipated Get Ready Benchmarking and Implementation Plan on behalf of the Ready team and all the other thoughtful, intentional, reflective staff of the City of Waterloo. This implementation plan is a follow-up to the Get Ready plan, which was approved by Council last December. It records and communicates the actions, initiatives, programs, and future intentions of staff across the city that address the goals outlined in the Get Ready plan. To provide a very brief review, the City of Waterloo formally began its Ready journey back in 2017-2018 with the creation of a DEI steering group. As this journey progressed, the city recognized that its journey required direction, resources, supports, and expertise. So in 2022, through council approval, the Ready team was formed. In the next year, the Ready team spent time consulting with staff, residents, community leaders, and representatives to understand intentions and expectations. The Ready team also partnered with Taylor Newberry Consulting to draft a strategy that would make sense of all of this information. That strategy became the Get Ready plan, and was approved by council last December. It instructed the city to take a closer look at what we do, how we do it, and why we do what we do. This intense reflection in our collective work since 2017 has been gathered into this benchmarking and implementation plan. Because this is the first attempt to understand where and how we have implemented READY into our work, it is also a benchmarking exercise. This collection of actions and intentions marks where we stand today at the very early stages of this journey. Future updates of the implementation plan will build upon all of this work and show us how far we've come along when we've traveled from where we are today. So where do we stand today? The Get Ready Plan is a strategic framework that grounds us in the experiences and expectations of residents and community partners. It connects the Ready Work to Council's strategic plan, as well as to the Reconciliation Action Partnership's Pathway Forward strategy. Essentially, it sets the bar that the city has to reach at a distance that was chosen by the Waterloo community. The Get Ready Plan is divided into 6 priority areas with goals for the city to work towards. While some goals are internally focused, asking the city to change the way that we collaborate, recruit, report, and advocate, there are also externally facing goals that call on us to improve service and program delivery and challenge us to rethink policies, protocols, and the ways that we communicate. This benchmarking and implementation plan responds to goals in the 6th priority area that asks us to build trust through better systems of accountability. The benchmarking and implementation plan is a record of the activity that staff have undertaken, are currently performing, or have the intentions to implement at some time in the future. It is essentially an attempt to provide community with some insight into the efforts that staff have made to meet priorities identified in the Get Ready Plan. The goal is to provide annual updates to Council on this implementation plan, and these annual updates will provide residents and community leaders with a means by which to monitor the efforts that the city is putting forward to meeting the objectives of the Get Ready Plan. They will also create opportunity for communities to course correct and redirect limited resources and energy to the appropriate direction that will improve outcomes for the most vulnerable through ongoing opportunities for review and dialogue. All the information tracked in the benchmarking and implementation plan have been identified through consultations that have occurred with staff since 2023. Staff have also had recent opportunities to review this information and make updates accurately that represent their intentions and efforts. Early drafts of the highlights of the implementation plan were also presented to community partners, and this was to confirm that this approach is both meaningful and helpful to community. Community leaders and representatives did find the benchmarking and implementation plan to be helpful. In particular, they found it to be helpful to raise awareness about the supports that are available for community members and to identify gaps that the city can work towards to address. Feedback fell into 3 large buckets. The first being that the city needs to improve communications to residents and the public about the programs, services, and opportunities that are available, as well as the points of access to be able to reach these opportunities. Residents lack awareness of supports that are available to them, including assistance for their unique needs. The second bucket asks the city to explore and expand its capacity to advocate on behalf of equity-denied groups where it is not or is limited in its ability to be a service provider. So housing is a good example that comes up. And then the third bucket, the city must continuously work with other local governments, community leaders, representatives to ensure that limited resources, whether human or financial, are directed towards the highest needs in vulnerable communities. This requires ongoing relationship building and maintenance, increased transparency, and intentional growing of trust within communities. So as we sort through all of this feedback and find innovative ways of being able to implement it, we have some immediate next steps that we also have to pay some attention to. The READY team is collaborating with the communications team to develop one-pagers that will highlight examples of the work that is happening in each priority area. These snapshots in time are meant to be easy to understand tools that we hope will help raise the general public's awareness of services and programs that we offer, but especially of the specialized considerations and supports that they have available to them. We are also going to work to update and brand the benchmarking and implementation plan, pending approval today, to share with the public through the Ready website or corresponding Engage Waterloo Region page. We hope that this and future updates will generate ongoing dialogue opportunities with community members about their needs, hopes, and progress. And then finally, the Ready team will begin working to develop a corresponding measurement and monitoring framework that aims to meaningfully measure the impacts of this journey out in the broader community. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Divya. I'll look to council. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Hanmer?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Divya, thank you very much for the update. I always look forward to seeing what we've accomplished, and there are many things, and there's still much more to get moving forward with. What would you say are the 2 or 3 key things we should, if we could only do 2 or 3 things, what should we focus on in the coming months?
Through the chair to Councillor Hanmer, I think that's a really great question, knowing that we have limited time and resources. A really big one that we are continuously called upon is to look at learning opportunities and expanding upon training that are available to staff. It's one thing to be reflective of our community. It's another thing to be able to meet the needs of our community. And meeting needs is, I would say, more essential and critical. But the best way to do that is to understand what those needs are. And so continuously we see, regardless of what we are consulting or engaging upon and who we're asking, training is a really large a requirement that we're asked to continuously fulfill. And so I think that that's a matter of continuously looking at where we need to grow. More recently, when we were looking at feedback on the implementation plan, we saw a lot of feedback that asked us to look at trauma-informed or sensitivity-based training. So we're seeing that evolution, but training continues to be a really big one. And then the second is that we know that there's still lots of work to do when it comes to understanding accessibility needs, and as well how we're going to meet the calls to action for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's work. So I think those are 2 other areas where if we have to put a large amount of focus or a limited amount of resources, those would probably help us to benefit the most people by being able to address the most vulnerable in our community.
Terrific, and continuing to move our plan forward to full implementation. I really like the idea of the pagers, just having those available to be able to share with residents of what is available in the city from an accessibility standpoint as we need it. Thank you. Thank you for your team.
Thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This is really difficult and comprehensive work that your team has taken on. It's sort of an everything plan with a lot of shared responsibilities. And so I'm just curious how we navigate that picture of success. I know, the idea is to develop indicators and measure what's meaningful, but what does success look like?
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, I think that's another really brilliant question, and I think everyone has been struggling with that now for some time, especially since I would say the field of DEI has grown and taken center place. Sorry, I think part of that is, I don't know that it is my role or purview to define success. I think that's for the community to tell us. And so that's why I think a big part of this work is that this is not a traditional implementation plan or a benchmarking exercise. Really, we see it as a tool by which to be able to engage community in a more meaningful or enhanced way. So this, being able to capture all of this allows us to be able to go back to community in a way where we're not now asking, what do you think about us, or what could we do better? But we're much more narrow and targeted in what we're asking to say, this is what we're doing, what are the gaps that you see? Where do you see that we should be making progress? Where should we be pivoting? And I think it's through those types of conversations and feedback that are a lot more focused on what we are able to provide and do that we're going to find what success will look like for our community. And I think the other challenging thing about this work is that success will never sort of have one goal point. It will constantly be moving because every time we raise the bar, we'll be called on to raise it even further. And so I think accepting that success should come from outside of our definition of it, and then accepting that we are taking on a challenge of a moving goalpost. I think that in itself is probably success if we can get to that mindset.
Just a follow up to that too, because I think this idea of it being an evergreen implementation plan, that, it's something that requires constant action. How do we ensure that everyone's coming along on this journey and that we're not burning out when the goalposts are moving?
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, I think that's a really important focus because it does feel like everything is a priority currently, and the list of priorities is growing, not shrinking. I think one of the pieces is that this implementation as it is currently, because this is capturing work that has happened over a number of years, it does feel really heavy trying to make sense of it. Most likely future plans are not going to be nearly this robust and not this long. And I think that makes a lot of sense because it will take a long time to understand and to work with community in a truly collaborative way to understand which goals and which priority areas need to move forward and which ones need to sort of either be held back or completely be halted or be redirected. So I think there's the worry or the concern that we have to move all of this forward at the same time is probably one that we won't see actually come to realization. I think the reality of it is that community, if we're truly working in collaboration with community, they're going to pick the things that they need to focus on, and those are going to be a few things that will require a lot of our attention. And the reality of that also is that our communities are also really tired. And they are also trying to advance many different things. So it's a matter of working collaboratively to figure out what those priorities are, but realistically only being able to move a few things at a time. I think also when we look at all the goals that are outlined in the priority areas, a lot of them require prerequisites to be completed, and we're just not there. As far as we come, we acknowledge we're early in this work. And so in order to fulfill some goals, we still have to complete others before them. And so some of this is staggered. When we had presented the Get Ready plan, we had acknowledged that even though it's a 5-year plan, we probably are not going to complete a large majority of it in 5 years. It's going to take a long time. But the idea being that as long as we're tracking what we're actually advancing and we're deciding what gets that attention through community collaboration, then we can move slowly at a pace that respects the growth of relationships and the capacity of community, and we can meet those needs where they're at.
Thanks for that. I have just one last follow-up question, and that's a lot of this work is the foundation of it is actually legislated, whether it's the Ontario Human Rights Code or federally our approach to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and its recommendations, the Accessibility Act, et cetera. And a lot of those set out minimums, and the work upon us is to exceed those minimums, which can be challenging in and of itself. But you've also laid out basically a case for advocacy at the municipal level. Can you share with us a little bit about what you would expect from council on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, I think a big part of advocacy through council is going to look at, we have a lot of community members who come and make, I think, really well stated arguments for why we should be advancing certain priorities or why we should be directing more resources or attention towards one thing versus the other. I think the challenge in the current context and environment is, as we've said, there are so many priorities and so many needs. And it is challenging for staff to know what that prioritization should look like. So depending on which team you're speaking to and what work they're taking on and what their strategic direction is, I think that we have a lot of competing, equally important, but competing priorities. And I think a big part of us being able to coordinate the way in which we are advocating through council is for council to be able to provide some of that leadership support to help us prioritize our priorities. Because I think that that will give us a lot of direction in terms of how to make sense when we have different teams looking at different avenues, either for the same challenge or for competing challenges, but that require the same resource. So I think it's completely within the team's mandates to be trying to do their best to meet their own strategic direction, but to make sense of what should move forward for the community first versus second versus third. I think that comes through council's leadership.
Councillor Bassick.
Thanks through Chair Rowe. First of all, congratulations to you and your team on this important report. I don't know if everybody knows, well, it's an excellent team. And I also want to thank staff who were here at the time to recommend this team, that they referred to your staff positions as advocates. You're not advisors, you're not officers, equity officers, but you're advocates. And so we can expect that you're going to be firm and challenging to us. And sometimes that's hard, but it's really good. And in particular, congratulations to you. This is no small feat, and you are an interim director of this team, and it is difficult to be an interim staff person in any position, and it's particularly difficult. Well, I don't know if it's particularly difficult, but I can imagine it might be particularly difficult to be tasked with creating the first ever benchmarking report for a team that at every organization receives pushback. So congratulations, you have done it with grace and
Thank you.
Great knowledge. I have two questions. One is around sort of the topic that keeps coming up is it's new work, it has to be integrated across teams, and there's going to be bumps in the road. We also have two other kind of buckets that are like intersect with your work. And I would say that very obviously, of course it intersects everywhere at the city, but very obviously the reports we get to council are the sustainability and climate update reports that came in April this year. And then next week we're going to see the strategic plan progress report. So what I'm wondering about is there intentions to coordinate reporting on these plans and integrating them together so they have more strength throughout the organization, or is there not, and there's a good reason for that, that you could share with us tonight?
Through the chair to Councillor Vasic, thank you for the kind words. So I would say at this point in time, given that not all, but a lot of these are newer reports, so to your point, the Get Ready plan is new, this benchmarking and implementation plan is new. So up until this point, because they weren't in existence, it was hard to sort of imagine that they would tangibly be brought together in a cohesive type of way. But in the development of the Get Ready plan, the Ready team had been looking at when, for example, the next strategic plan would be being developed, when the Reconciliation Action Partnership would potentially be looking at a review of their pathway forward, strategic pathway. And so in that way, we have been thinking about how this work could get rounded into or rolled up into upcoming pieces of work. And so from that perspective, we have been thinking about how to be able to make this a more seamless, streamlined process in terms of where we're capturing all of this information and data. I think because these are the first ready reports, there's also a lot to capture in them. We are trying to make sense of all of the feedback that has been received internally through staff and externally through community representatives, and then all of the collective learning that we've had. But those are not necessarily pieces that have to be this robustly captured in future reports. And so it is, I think, going to be easier moving forward to make sure that, for example, the Get Ready plan is maybe just a component or an objective captured within the broader strategic plan. So those conversations, I would say, have started at a very high level, particularly when we think about corporate-wide strategies. But up until this point, that wasn't a focus because we were trying to capture a pretty vast amount of information.
Yeah, that's great. It's wonderful having this much information. And I just wanted to clarify that I hope I wasn't suggesting that it should be lost in another report, but more to say, how can these intersecting reports really be strengthened when they come, if they were to come together as well. So anyways, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I did want to point out something that I continue to see at community events when we present this work, and this precedes your time. But the catalyst for the Ready team was first and foremost the protests around George Floyd's murder in 2020. And that protest happened here locally on June 3rd, 2020. And then a few weeks later, Land Back Camp set up tents in Victoria Park, which they then moved to Waterloo Park. And those had associated demands. And one of those demands, among, I think there were 4 or 5, and one was to create teams like the Ready Team at local municipalities. And why I bring this up is, one, because I'm worried it's going to be lost in the story that we're telling about the Get Ready Team, or the Ready Team. Such catchy names for all of this stuff, so I'm getting them mixed up. But I don't want it to get lost. And community, as you've highlighted here, and obviously as is showing up here to support this plan, plays such an important role in informing how the plan is now, how it should change, and how it should grow. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that activism gets lost when we expect things to be more palatable for an institution like this. And so I just want to make sure that as we're telling the story of Ready, that we're not making it a celebratory corporate initiative, though we can celebrate it and we should, but we can't lose sight of how the local Black Lives Matter movement, the ACB network, Aqua, Land Back Camp were instrumental in getting this team and getting us to do this work. We might have done it anyways as the context changed and other organizations did it, but locally, those community members were so important. And so I just wouldn't want anyone to get lost along the way in the stories that we tell about it.
Through the chair to Councillor Vasek, I think that's a really brilliant and important point. It is true that we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our community's collective activism to bring us here. Those pieces of the history of the Get Ready team are captured in the Get Ready plan. For briefness here, we haven't mentioned them, but it is true in the implementation plan where it made sense to capture them. For example, leading out of conversations that happened through Land Back, there were reports that were formulated in-house through staff, and so we've tried to capture those reports and the sentiments and objectives that came out of those reports because they are directly correlated to the fact that we have an Indigenous advocate and that we have reconciliation work that is prioritized. So where we have been able to, we have tried to weave those stories in, but that doesn't mean that we can't always still keep getting better and doing a better job of being able to acknowledge that in future versions as well. So it's definitely noted.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you. That's excellent. And I'm sure you're not ignoring it or anything. I'm not suggesting that, sorry. It's more delicate when there's so many people in because I really appreciate your work. And so I want this just to be a dialogue, but there's also this power thing, we're literally up higher. It's strange. But I guess very practically, I've seen this presentation tonight and then another one in the community, and I'd seen one other one before. I think it could be a couple bullet points to provide context around it, about Land Back Camp and their demands, about George Floyd. So that also those stories don't get lost in the context of the history of when this all emerged.
Thank you.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, Chair Rowe, and thank you, Divya. I echo Councillor Vasek's comments about our appreciation for the work that you've done over the last couple of years, you and your team, to to bring this report or this plan to us. And it was really, it really was impressive to read through all of the different actions that have taken place over the last number of years in the previous term and then today, and just really understand how much work needed to happen. And of course, there's much more work that needs to be done. So thanks for outlining that. It's a good reminder for us of where we've been, but also where we need to go. Just a couple of questions. I'm curious because we have such a large student population in Waterloo, and we're really grateful as a city that we have our post-secondary institutions here. But I'm just curious how they were captured or in this plan, or are reflected in this plan.
Through the chair to Mayor McCabe, I think so. There's a couple of different pieces. When the teams who work most closely with students or youth or international students, some of their work is reflective of that, and so some of the actions, whether we look at things coming out of the recreational services team, whether we look at things coming out of, for example, community services, CPO, community programming and outreach services. So in particular, I'm thinking of, for example, the neighborhoods team. There's lots of actions that are captured through them that speak to the way that they're either altering or creating new programming that either serves any one of those particular groups within that demographic. But we do also recognize that in the Get Ready plan itself, we did not outline specific populations. We didn't call out specific populations. So when we did take the highlighted version of the implementation plan back out to community, one of the pieces of feedback that we did receive is to put more emphasis on the whole age spectrum, but particularly for youth and international students, and then to look specifically at international students and the intersections with just race, immigration, country of origin, all of those types of things. So we recognize that there's more work that we do need to do, and we're going to keep trying to build on the work that is already happening in the ways that they're interacting with us. So again, we see the greatest interaction with our recreational services and then with our community programming services. And so there's lots of opportunity there to keep building upon them. And those teams are actively always trying to find ways to engage, to be able to consult with members of those groups to collect the information about what is needed to really be able to provide programming that is most appropriate for them.
Yeah, and that's good to hear because, students, wherever they come from, whether they're, they may have grown up in Waterloo or Waterloo region or somewhere in Ontario or Canada, or they may have come from somewhere, around the world. But, we know we're always looking for people to talent attraction, and we want to keep the students who come to our community and make our community an attractive place for them to want to study, but then also stay right. So that was really the framework that I'm asking about, and I was just thinking that maybe you might want to come to the Town and Gown committee at some point to just outline that. They may be interested. Councillor Rose on the lead on that, this council lead on that committee, so I'll leave that with you if it might be something they may be interested to just hear how much work the city is doing to try and make students feel that wherever they're from, that we want them to stay, because we know we're always, our local companies and that are always looking for new talent. That's a big challenge here. Just a couple of other questions I had was, just around council itself, and just wanted to note, where did I have this? Oh, that just one thing, I don't think I saw it in there, but just in terms of attract around the elections piece and attracting more people to participate, I don't think I saw about the security piece, that council members are able to get home security, because I think that was from a previous council that put that in place, but I understand part of the reason behind that was approved was for people who are from cultural communities who we know face much more backlash when they're in positions like elected office, so that they would have some level of comfort that they could just to make sure that that's captured in there as well. And then also part of what there was information in there, I'm just looking for it here, around, encouraging, people to get involved in municipal elections and things like that. And maybe I don't know if this is out of the scope for the Get Ready plan, but we also want people to run for office at some point as well. That's a little bit awkward maybe to say because we're all elected here, but somewhere in the work that we do to just try and maybe the clerk wants to answer that, but just, it's a bit awkward for me to ask that because I value every one of my current council members, but we know that we turn ourselves over, but we want to be a place where people from different cultural communities can understand what happens here and how it works and how to get involved. So I was just kind of curious because I didn't see much in there about that.
Through the chair to Mayor McCabe, no, we really appreciate your awareness and sensitivity to that. And I think Part of why it might not be jumping out is in this particular plan is that we did make a lot of changes in time for the 2022 election, whereas this is more focused on 24, 25 and going forward. So
Okay.
Things that we did in 2022, changing how we're posting nomination form information. For example, the security reimbursement, which is available for members of council. But what I will add is that it's a continuing, evolving process where we're always exploring those opportunities. Shortly, we'll have on our new website to come information from AMO's Democracy Project, and they're hosting a lot of free sessions for people that are interested in running. And we're also going to be hosting, along with other area municipalities in the spring, a session where people can come and hear from previous candidates and get some advice, and really trying to make everyone feel comfortable that wants to run for office can run for office and have their questions answered, and trying to remove some of those barriers. So yeah, it was probably an oversight not to mention some of those finer parts in this plan, but definitely it's a continuing amount of work that's happening.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'll just a follow-up question, I guess, to the clerk, because I was also just on the accessibility piece, and I know there's, we talk of, maybe not enough, but I think we do raise the issue of accessibility kind of generally, like of our buildings and things like that, and I know there's more work to do on that front. But I know there's also some residents who've asked on a number of occasions about, we don't have the opportunity to have hybrid meetings, so just wondered if you could give me maybe a bit of a timeline of when or what's happened, or what's happening in terms of like when we may be able to switch to have a hybrid and an in-person option for people who are, not for council, but for people who want to delegate.
Through the chair to Mayor McCabe, I'm not sure that I have a definitive timeline for you right now, but I can say that the FDMS team, Facility Design and Management Services team, is working on a holistic strategy for this room for accessibility, and that certainly is part of it. And so there'll be more information coming on that in the near future, but that plan will have some shorter term goals and some longer term goals.
Okay.
And certainly that is in the shorter term goals category, along with some other more immediate changes that I think are needed around accessibility to the platform. For example, the entrance way. So there will be a plan that comes forward with short and long-term goals.
Okay, thanks. That's good to hear. I appreciate that. And I think that's it. Oh, sorry, just Divya, since you're here. When I was reading through and and there was mention about the sacred fires, just that council missed our opportunity because it was raining. We got rained out. So I don't know if there's time at some point. I know now we're into winter, but if there's time at some point to put that back on our agenda, because I think that would be a really valuable experience for us. So.
Through the chair to Mayor McCabe, Brian is working on hosting a few more Sacred Fires, so we're happy to share the dates of those for anyone who'd like to attend as available.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all for council questions, although I do have a couple and a comment myself. Thank you, Divya, for the report. I'm wondering, how is this benchmarking and implementation plan helpful to the broader community? Like outside of just reporting, a list of the actions and intentions that the city staff are completing. How does that impact the community?
To the chair, I think there's a couple of different things. And this, I think, is the most exciting part, actually, of this, because I don't know, maybe other people do, but reports are not particularly exciting for me. And so we've tried to not think of this as a report, but more so as a tool. And so as a tool, it serves a few different purposes. I know I've mentioned a few, but I'll just reiterate them and then maybe mention a couple others that I haven't yet spoken about. I think primarily, as I said, that this is a record of the work that has been done at the city or is currently being done, and that is important to be able to recognize because it is a vast spectrum of work that is happening, and as you can see, every single team is involved. So it's not like we can say that this is just the Ready team doing the work. Truly, it is every single team, and so many of our staff are dedicated and committed to doing this work. It is also a great way of capturing future intentions. So I know that that can be sometimes confusing because it's got actions and it's got intentions, but it is the impetus to capture future intentions is so that we have some way by which we're accountable to communities. So when communities note that it's something we're intending to do, they can come back and hold us accountable for why it hasn't happened or hasn't moved forward. And I think that is really important when you're attempting to build trust with community. The other thing is that we're hoping that this will serve as a really good tool to raise awareness of the community, of the different programs, services, resources that are available, but especially the specialized supports that are available through each of these for community members. And so that way we're hoping that maybe this can facilitate participation for our most vulnerable community members as well. It is also a tool that I think we would like to use to foster more meaningful conversation with community members. So especially in a time where we think about how often we hear that community members are fatigued or that we've been already told many times over what we're supposed to do, I think this tool is a really beneficial tool in that it serves the purpose of we can reframe those conversations to be meaningful. So we're not coming to the table to say, tell us what you'd like to see us do in programming at our rec centers. But instead, we're now coming to say, this is all that we do. What is working, what isn't working, and how would you like us to move this forward in a different way? And I hope that that will show our community members that we are listening and we're attempting. We know we're not going to get it right. We're definitely not going to get it right all the time, but that we are open to receiving that feedback and that their feedback goes somewhere to actually altering what they're receiving. I think that also goes a long way in building trust. So we think that this will serve as a really good purpose to frame our conversations to be more meaningful. I think more broadly speaking as well, I know I say this a lot to our teams and I don't maybe say this as much externally, but I did mention earlier that the Get Ready plan sets a bar for us that we have to reach, but it was really set for us by community. And I think in a maybe cheeky way, this is a challenge to our colleagues, whether that's across municipalities or to the private sector or to community organizations. If we can do this, then nobody else has an excuse. So this really showcases how you can embed Ready into day-to-day activities in really small ways that have huge meaningful impact for people. And so hopefully this maybe will set up an environment of competition as opposed to some discourse that isn't as meaningful or sort of redirects away from the purpose of this type of work. So we really hope that this also serves as a tool to showcase that Ready isn't a barrier. You can actually still do really great work, and in fact, you can improve many people's lives by incorporating it. And then lastly, I would say that given the current sociopolitical context and all of the different discourse that is happening around EDI work, which I think is healthy and important, there is also a lot of disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation, and so I think this tool serves a purpose here whereby we can redirect the conversation to what is important, what makes sense, and why we need to stay the track. So I think it serves a lot of different purposes for community.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I have another quick question. And as you said at the beginning, that this work is across departments and there's a lot of contributors. So you may not be the person that can answer this question, Divya, and that's okay. But I was interested in the piece about staff and mentorship. So one of the actions was job shadowing and mentorship program. Internal staff volunteer to be mentors and are matched with staff requesting mentorship opportunities. So that's very interesting to me, and I was curious about that. But again, this may not be you specifically, so I can redirect. But if you have any thoughts on that.
I have a little bit of information that I can share, but if it is still lacking, I'm happy to go back and collect more information and follow up with council. So my understanding is that the job shadowing and mentorship program offers development opportunities to staff, and it's based on staff's particular needs and interests for personal growth and development. So it's a great way to learn skills, new skills, gain knowledge, and explore different areas within the corporation. So annually, there's a call that goes out for employees who are willing to volunteer to become mentors, and then that list is maintained over time, and employees then are requested to participate if they are interested. They get matched with a mentor, and then the mentor and mentee meet to develop a contract for the year. And so that looks at the types of skills and experiences that the mentee would like to develop, and perhaps what a growth plan could look like to achieve those. Usually, my understanding is the agreements last for a year, and then there is an evaluation that happens through both the mentor and the mentee to see if those needs were met. But that's my understanding of the program. I'm happy to collect more information, though, if you would need it.
That's a great overview, actually. It gives me a really good idea of how that works. And I think it's an excellent program for staffs and for the mentors. So thank you.
Thank you.
I actually just have one more comment that I wanted to make. I'm the council, as you know, I'm the council liaison for Ready. And I want to recognize and sincerely thank the Ready team for their dedication and care in advancing this work. Introducing new ways of thinking and shifting long-standing systems is never simple. And this team has shown courage, persistence, and thoughtfulness throughout this process. I'm incredibly proud of the direction we are all moving in and grateful to everyone who has contributed to moving this important work forward. So thank you so much. Okay, we will move on. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. Councillor Hanmer will move the report. Councillor Wright will second that. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now we will move on. Our next item was to be an urban design manual project launch, but that is being deferred to a later date. So we will move on to our public meetings. And our first public meeting will consider the Andale Holdings Incorporated. So for all attending, this is an informal public meeting to consider item 13A, zoning bylaw amendment Z2525, Andale Holdings Incorporated, 445 Andale Road. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting. Anybody who wants further notice of this application, including the formal public meeting and passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate registry located on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. If there's more than one registry, please make sure you're assigning the appropriate one. The planner, Madison Hedrick, will now provide a brief overview of the application.
Good evening, Mayor McCabe, members of council, city staff, and the public. As noted, this is the informal public meeting for zone change application Z-25-25 for the lands at 445 Andale Road. The subject property is located on the north side of Lexington Road between Davenport Road and Andale Road. The property is currently developed with the Christ Lutheran Church, associated parking areas, and a community garden. To the north, west, and east of the property are single detached buildings. To the south of the property is Highgate on Lexington and the Waterloo Mennonite Brethren Church. Staff are also reviewing an application to the south of the property for Phase 2 of Highgate, which includes 2 new residential apartment buildings, one 7 stories in height and one 12 stories in height. There are 2 parks in close proximity to the property, Blue Stream Park that can be seen to the top left of the screen, and Lexington Park that can be seen to the top right of the screen. Additionally, the closest school to the property is Sandown Public School, which can be seen to the bottom right of the screen. This is a closer view of the subject property where you can better see the existing church, associated parking area, and community garden. The property has an approximate area of 1.2 hectares with approximate frontages of 106 meters along Andale Road, 113 meters along Lexington Road, and 113 meters along Davenport Road. The proposed development contains 5 blocks of townhouses for a total of 57 townhouse units, which consists of 15 linear townhouse units and 42 stacked townhouse units. The existing Christ Lutheran Church will be retained. The proposed development contains a total of 92 vehicular parking spaces, with 57 of those parking spaces for the townhouse units, which equals 1 parking space per dwelling unit, and 35 parking spaces to be shared as visitor parking spaces for the residential use and as parking spaces for the spiritual use. The proposed development also contains 46 bicycle parking spaces. These are some conceptual renderings of the proposed development. The renderings show the proposed parking areas in front of the townhouse blocks. The 3-story sections of the townhouse blocks are proposed to be stacked townhouse units, while the 2-story sections are proposed to be linear townhouse units. The official plan currently designates the property as low-density residential with a maximum height of 10 meters. It is also within the built-up area where new development is directed to occur. OPA 58, which was approved by Council in December 2024, designates the property as low-rise residential with a maximum height of 4 stories. This designation will come into effect following provincial approval of OPA 58. The property is currently zoned Residential 1, and the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to Residential 8 and add various site-specific amendments to accommodate the proposed development. The requested amendments to the zoning bylaw include rezoning the lands from Residential 1 to Residential 8, increase the building height from 10 meters to 12 meters, permission for 35 parking spaces to be shared as visitor parking spaces for the residential use and as parking spaces for the spiritual use, and permission for spiritual use to be added as a permitted use in the Residential 8 zone. The applicant has submitted various studies and reports to support their application, which includes a transportation impact study. Jenny Renaud, who is the manager of transportation, is available tonight to answer any questions on traffic or transportation items. All of the submitted reports and studies are available for the public to access on Engage Waterloo. Over the next several weeks, staff will review the submission and consider the merits of the requested amendments, along with comments from the public and other agencies. The feedback will then be provided to the applicant to give them a chance to resolve any matters or refine the proposal. We will then return to council in a couple of months with a final recommendation. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
Thank you so much. Council, any questions? Councillor Vasek?
Yeah, through you, Chair Rowe. I don't think this is going to be a very popular question, but I was just curious if more density or height was contemplated for this site, and if so, what did the conversations look like? If not, why not?
So through OPA 58, the site is designated as low-rise residential, and that includes a maximum permitted height of 4 stories. So through OPA 58, we eliminated the height in meters and just more flexibility with 4 stories. So that was contemplated.
I see nodding in my direction. So through you, Councillor Rowe, to Councillor Vasek. That might be a question for the applicant to consider. The official plan does set a slightly higher limit, but the zoning is still sensitive to primarily townhouse forms, and this is a form of development that they feel could fit onto that property. But that might be a question to consider through the applicant themselves. So the official plan does set a higher limit, but from a zoning functional perspective, stacked towns are generally around this height.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I'll reserve that for the applicant, or maybe the applicant can speak to it now that it's out there. And then another question, I'm trying to figure out what our delegated authority to the Director of Planning permits. And so R1 to R8 would be considered, I guess, a major change. What would be considered, what could be proposed on this site that would go through delegated authority? Given some of our other planning applications that have come, this is the context for my question. Given some of the other planning applications that have come, while this might be technically considered major, it doesn't look major compared to some of our other properties with greater height, or applications with greater height and density.
So through the chair to Councillor Vasek, through delegated authority, one of the also considerations that we would consider is public involvement, and we want the public to be involved in this application. So that is also one of the considerations we considered for choosing to go to council rather than through delegated authority.
I'll also add that when we're changing the zone category, that is always a major change to the plan. A minor change that could occur through delegated authority is something small where they're shifting the setback very minor ways, where it's not quite a minor variance, but slightly more. And so there's very unique circumstances where that can be considered, but the primary intent is that we go through this full review process as a major application in this sort of situation, especially where new land uses are being proposed. The current R1 zone would permit detached dwellings on the property, but to permit townhouses, this is a full change to the zoning. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Rowe. Thanks for the presentation here. It strikes me that we've approved a similar sort of repurposing of a church property at the corner of Westfield, West Mountain, Northfield, excuse me. And one of the things that they were asking for was a similar sort of shared parking agreement as we are seeing here. Now that the new church, the All Saints Church, has been redone and the townhomes are in place there, have we got any feedback on whether or not that shared parking arrangement is working at Northfield and Westmount? Any sort of things that we might have learned from that?
Through Councillor Rowe to Councillor Bodley, we have not received any formal complaints or comments that I'm aware of, or through Jenny as well. But it's something we can look into, and it is a very relevant corresponding sort of setup, so it is something we're looking into. Yeah, including like going on Sundays and checking how all those other considerations factor. Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. Thanks for the information and the presentation. Could you go back a couple of slides to where there was the concept with the built? Oh, and I think one more. Yeah, that. I'm just curious. Like I'll ask this of the developer as well, because you might not have the detail on this, but just where some of the green space is, and I was asking, like, for assuming that there's families living here or people with kids, you know, where would someone kind of step outside and like a young child would just be able to go outside and play? Like, are there backyards, or is there some park space being contemplated through this?
So through the chair to Mayor McCabe, there is a minimum landscape open space requirement in the R8 zone of 30%. The proposal as it currently stands is proposing 47% landscape open space. So there would be some spaces for residents to enjoy landscaped areas.
Okay, I guess it's just not really obvious, and this is the only picture we've seen of this, and maybe the developer will have better concepts, because I just don't really see where 40% of that space is. I mean, I see where there's some open concept, but mostly not really for green space and landscaping. So, so thanks for that. And then my other question is, because I've read some of the residents' comments on different Facebook posts, and we've received some emails and correspondence from people around just the traffic flow around here. We know that, well, I think it was maybe 3 months ago, we were talking about Lexington and you know, I think it was, yeah, we were talking about Lexington and left turn signals and just, you know, sort of the flow of traffic generally around here. So can you just give us some more information around, you know, how that might change or how traffic might be managed? And then, like, and also in consideration of, you know, if there's kids here, you want your kids to be able to cross streets on their own when they're a certain age, you know, to go see a friend or walk to another park or whatever, walk to school, whatever it is. So can you just, I guess, Jenny, provide some background information on that? Thanks.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Through the chair to Mayor McCabe. There are quite a few actually studies going on in this area. The one you're mentioning is the feasibility or the Complete Streets, Lexington Complete Streets study that staff presented to council not too long ago. And in that, the consultant had identified that Lexington Road itself, there was some road safety concerns or issues that we had brought to the table, and we were bringing forth a plan where we were going to redesign Lexington so that we could have some traffic calming, some better crossings for pedestrians, and make some improvements, and especially add more active transportation in that network to make some connections. So that plan, the feasibility was approved by council in principle, and then we are now into detailed design of that. Along with that, we had just brought to council also our network screening, where a couple of these locations in this area have been raised in that screening, and we are working on mitigating strategies. In particular, the intersection of Davenport and Lexington came up. What it showed, the study showed that there was some turning movement and some red light running that has been happening there. So we're in engagement with the region of Waterloo to talk about how can we look at that intersection and make some improvements there specifically for that. Alongside then the 215 property at Highgate, plus this one over here, we're looking at all of those in layers. And we want to make sure that not one property is going to have any adverse or negative impacts on the network itself. So we're still in the middle of that review, but at the end of the day, staff are very aware of making sure that any decision that happens on this property is something that can be balanced in the network of transport, like our own network.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure I kind of understood. Oh, sorry, did you have something else to add?
Just having pedestrians was the other part of your question.
Oh, sorry. So as part of the Lexington feasibility, there are islands, and we're putting in pedestrian crossovers, and then the signalized signal at Dearborn will remain there. We're looking at leading pedestrian signal at that intersection so that pedestrians will actually get to go in advance of vehicles. So there's different things that we're looking at that intersection and along this corridor.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask about a signalized pedestrian crossover, so thanks for catching that part of it too. So if I'm hearing you and understanding it, like you're looking at this whole area, when you say layers, you mean like you're talking about, I mean, the whole thing, but sort of piece by piece so that you're really trying to understand it as a whole system there and what's happening, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, okay. Thanks very much. I hope that gives people some confidence that, like, this is, okay, they're saying no, but I'm just saying that staff are really going to, through this process, take a look at how traffic, you already are taking I mean, it was 3 months ago when you brought the Complete Streets piece to us, and there's the network screening that you mentioned. So there is a lot of work happening in that area, particularly to just make it safer for people regardless of how they're moving throughout that area, whether it's on foot, on bike, you know, a mobility device or a vehicle. Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any further questions of staff? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just curious about the tree report here. So it does look like there's significant tree removal as part of this proposal, and it's unlikely that they would be able to plant up to the city's requirement of 2 to 1, or even up to what has been recently proposed by the Six Nations of the Grand River, the 10 to 1 tree replacement ratio. So when we have the cash in lieu option, does that tree canopy get replaced within the same neighborhood or within a specific proximity to the proposed site, or is it just go into the general coffers for tree planting?
Through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Wright. In general, we try and plant trees wherever we have the opportunity. At this time, my understanding is the monies are provided to parks, but there's no particular plan for distribution. It's where there's opportunities, we plant trees. If there's opportunities identified nearby, I'm sure parks would be happy to explore those as part of the process.
Thanks for that. I also just noted that there is a somewhat rare tree as part of this listing that was in the report. It's a rock elm. I'm not sure, it doesn't look like it's been assessed as being in great condition, but when we have something like that, it'd be great to make sure that we're replacing those kinds of Carolinian or native tree species.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Thank you so much, Madison. I will now ask our registered delegations to come forward as I call you. Our first delegation this evening is Christian from Up Consulting. You have 10 minutes, Christian.
All right. Yes. So good evening, everyone. Members of council, my name is Christian Simonides. I am a senior planner with Up Consulting here on behalf of the applicant and or our client seeking to advance the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application for the subject property. I'll also note that some representatives of the applicant and or our client are in attendance this evening. I would also like to say thank you to city staff for their presentation. Certainly many of my speaking points will be similar on a number of slides, but I'll try to keep things concise. So this slide just provides an overview of the major topics of my presentation. Again, going through site context, the development proposal, required planning approvals, the planning rationale, and I'll certainly be available to answer any questions following my presentation. So again, this slide provides the overview of the site with the existing Christ Lutheran Church located on the subject property with surface parking as well as community garden and large open space. The site is surrounded by single detached dwellings to the north, east, as well as the west, as well as a mid and or high-rise retirement home to the south of Lexington Road there. The site is also adjacent to GRT routes 29 and 31, as well as Route 6, which is also accessible within walking distance. The site is also within proximity of the Conestoga Mall, and most notably the Ion LRT stations, which provides connections through those bus routes. All right, so the proposed development consists of a mix of linear and stacked townhouses for a total of 57 dwelling units. More specifically, the applicant is proposing 42 stacked townhouses or walk-up units, as well as 15 linear townhouses. I would also add that the proposed tenure is rental, so not condominium. A mix of 1 to 3 bedroom units are proposed, with the breakdown shown on the slide here on your screen. The proposal contemplates a building height of 3 stories for the stacked towns, but 2 or 2.5 stories for the linear townhouses. Now, with respect to parking, 57 residential spaces are proposed, which is equal to a 1-to-1 ratio of dwelling units to parking spaces. 35 shared parking spaces are proposed between the church and the visitor parking spaces. And the intent of this strategy, and I'll get into more detail on this, is to balance the peak demand between the church as well as the residential use during, on and off hours of both uses. I'd also note too that 46 bicycle parking spaces are proposed. That's an error. I apologize for that on my slide there, but it's 46 throughout the site. And should council approve this application, the applicant is proposing to sever the existing church as a distinct lot, and then the residential portion would be its own distinct lot as well. So this slide just provides an overview of the proposed site plan. The proposed townhouses and the parking spaces are proposed along the western and northern perimeter of the site, with the block also being located just north of that central common amenity connection or area, which can be seen in the middle of the site there. The existing church, again, would remain as it exists in its current location, with the shared parking spaces being located to the front and the sides of that structure there. So 2 accesses are proposed along Andale Road, and the internal drive aisle will essentially loop through the site. Per direction of city staff prior to the formal submission, with accesses along Davenport Road as well as Lexington Road were not supported, hence the reason for the 2 accesses along Andale Road. So this slide here just provides a 3D rendering of the proposed development facing north. So this is looking from the corner of Lexington Road and Andale Road. And then you can see, again, the proposed townhouses are there. Existing church has just faded out just to provide a distinction for what's proposed versus existing. Again, this slide is another perspective of 3D rendering. Just this time is facing south from the intersection of Davenport Road and Fox Hunt Road. So this slide provides conceptual renderings of the site. The image on the left shows the central landscaped connection or entrance with detailed programming of this space to be determined during the site plan application stage. So not at the zoning bylaw amendment stage, but this is typically done during the site plan application stage. The image on the right shows one of the townhouse blocks where you can see the stacked townhouses and the linear townhouses stagger as you move left to right. So it goes stacked, linear, etc. Again, this slide just provides some different perspectives as well of the site. So I won't spend too much time on the slide since I know Madison touched on these, but ultimately the applicant is seeking to rezone the subject property from R1 to R8 in order to permit the proposed townhouses. Several site-specific provisions are also requested as part of the application pertaining to a slight increase in the permitted height, permitting the shared parking arrangement, as well as permitting the existing church as an additional permitted use. And just having some preliminary discussions with city staff. I'll note that the maximum height site-specific provision may or may not be warranted. I believe that it just depends on how the definition is interpreted. It may actually be within that maximum building height that's already permitted in the R8 zone. And then further, should council approve this zoning bylaw amendment application, the applicant, again, would seek a future consent application where they would sever the existing church from the proposed residential portion of the development. So I know the slide has a lot of text, but ultimately a number of perspectives were considered for the proposed development, both from a policy perspective as well as a technical perspective with respect to the reports and studies, et cetera, that were submitted. I'll note that the proposed development implements the low-density residential land use designation in the official plan, which does permit the proposed townhouses, the density, as well as the height. And that's why an official plan amendment is not required as part of this proposal. It is our opinion that the proposal aligns with and is supported by provincial, regional, and city policy direction for intensification as well as housing diversity in communities. With respect to the building height, I just want to add that there is a 7.5 meter buffer along that northern property line there between the site and the adjacent single attached dwelling there. So the intent there is to, again, and I will note that 7.5 meets the minimum requirement in the R8 zone, but also note too that the variation in the 2.5 and 3 stories provides additional compatibility or minimizes massing impacts in that respect. I'll also note that the proposed shared parking arrangement between visitor and church parking balances aims to balance peak demand between the church and the residential use, making efficient use of the land. This approach was supported by the transportation impact study that was submitted as part of this application. However, I just want to note that we're still waiting, and it was noted by city staff on the technical comments from city staff. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. There's just one thing I'd like to note as well, that it was on November 20th, the applicant or the developer hosted a developer-led open house where we certainly heard a lot of the comments from the public and took a note of those for sure. So again, I'm sure we're going to hear many of the same comments and questions again, but I just wanted to note that we certainly are listening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Before I move to staff questions, I just wanted to remind those who are with us this evening in the audience to please keep talking to a minimum, because we are hearing it up here, and it is can be just a bit disruptive. Thank you. Okay, Council, are there any questions? Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, through you. Christian, thank you for the overview. I just wanted to follow up on your very last comment that you hosted with the developer on November 20th. And can you just let us know, you said you heard a lot of things. Have they been addressed at all in what you've put together, or not yet?
Yeah, so through the chair, that's a great question. So they haven't, and the only reason why I say that they haven't is because we still haven't received the technical comments. So again, throughout the planning process, it's certainly a balance between public comments as well as the technical comments that we received. So we just wanted to present what was presented at that open house as well as the application currently stands. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you. So they're still under consideration?
For sure, certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Vasek.
Thanks, through you, Chair Rowe. Just the same question that I had for staff, but for you. So had you contemplated increased height and density for this site, and how did you land here?
So through the chair, I don't have an exact answer to that. There may have been some alternatives prior to our firm being retained, but again, it also goes back to a balancing act in that we feel that this density, this use, the height, et cetera, certainly is functional based on the reports and plans and reports and studies, et cetera, that were submitted as part of this. So again, certainly, as per the official plan, and maybe there could be some justification for increased density, but again, that could be at the detriment of the parking spaces, the landscaped area, the common amenity space. So yeah, again, it's our opinion that this current proposal as it stands is an appropriate form of density, et cetera.
Yes. Do you think you'd be able to find out the actual answer? Because you're speculating, and those are great. Those are great guesses. Sorry, I'm not meaning to be or sound rude. It sounds like you don't have the full story, and I am curious about it. Is it possible to get that for us in council?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I can follow up with our client and just take a look if there was. There may or may not, but yeah, I'll follow up certainly.
Thank you so much. And I have one question for staff. When the time is right.
Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Rowe. Again, I want to reference back to when council approved the redevelopment of the All Saints Church at the corner of Northfield and Westmount. One of the things that we heard from the proponent was regarding some of the challenges that the church itself was facing, financial challenges, dwindling parishioners, etc. And I'm curious if you can provide any feedback for us as to what may or may not be driving the owners of the property to be looking at this proposal at this point in time, and whether that has whether funding or finances for the church itself has anything to do with it.
Yeah, so through the chair, thank you for the question. Again, this is more so a question for ownership and our clients, so I can certainly follow up with a more direct answer to that, but I'd imagine that it would be financial related. Certainly that's a trend that we're seeing not only in City of Waterloo, but throughout the region, and other areas of Ontario, country, et cetera. So I know that we do have similar projects. Our firm is working with other developers or clients in this similar manner of this sort of redevelopment of existing church spaces. So then that is one of the factors, but I can't confirm that that is the major factor, the factor itself, so.
No, I appreciate that. And just as a follow-up, if I may, through you, Chair Rowe, and maybe you could get back to us with this, again, sort of what we had heard previously was this was the only way to save the church at the corner of Northfield and Westmount. And the alternative would have been to sell the property to a developer who would have torn down the church and built perhaps something larger, as Councillor Vasic is alluding to. And so I would love to know if this is a piece of the puzzle for the church to remain in the area. Because it strikes me that these faith-based institutions and the challenges that they're facing, finding creative solutions to manage some of the challenges that they're facing is really important as we're looking at some of the challenges that they're dealing with. So I'd appreciate if you could get back to us in a future meeting as to whether or not that's part of what is driving this. Thank you.
Certainly, yep.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm curious also about whether the preserved place of worship has any community space that is contemplated to be available to the surrounding development. Thanks.
Through the chair, so that's a great question. That's something that I don't have an answer to in that respect. That's certainly an agreement or some approach that we can, work with city staff as well as our client to determine. But yeah, that certainly is a notable alternative as well to maybe some additional space on site. So. But again, I will note too, and I know that there was a question earlier for city staff with respect to landscape, open space, common amenity space, et cetera. So I just want to reiterate too that the application does meet those minimum requirements in that respect. Hence why there isn't a site-specific provision for them. But yeah, that's certainly some alternative that again we can just note back to our client and see what we can do. So.
Mayor McCabe.
Thanks very much. Through you, Chair. Thanks for coming in tonight and sharing this information. I'm just curious, as I ask staff as well, about, you're talking about the open landscape area, but I'm just not really clear, where's sort of the play space and common gathering area?
So through the chair to the mayor, it's my understanding that so I'll first note that there's a central area that you'll see on the site plan that I just pulled up again. So that essentially is the common amenity area or connection or space that's there. And again, I want to reiterate to members of council, mayor, those in attendance right now, is that the programming of these spaces are typically done at the site plan stage. Those sort of details don't come out during zoning bylaw amendments stages, and certainly city staff can likely reiterate that. So again, what you see there is not necessarily what will be there. It's more so a working exercise and negotiation between city staff and our client as to what could ultimately be there during the site plan application stage. So.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful to know. But and so you're suggesting that the middle area will be like a common area? In one of the slides, if you go back, I don't know which. Yeah, this one on the left. Is that part of that common area?
Yeah. So yes. Sorry. Apologies for interrupting. Yes. So through the chair to the mayor. Yes, that's correct. So on the left, you could see that's where, and I think you can see my cursor. Yeah, the left. Yep. That's where the church is. So that'd be facing south, and then that's block number 1 or 2, I believe. Block 1 maybe. But again, I hear in the crowd the programming is determined at the site plan stage. So I just want to keep saying that again.
Okay, but yeah, okay. When I saw this, I wasn't sure if this was like an interior road space, or if this was actually like common space and walking area, and maybe. This is just a concept, but if this is an area where there would be play space for kids or people to just kind of hang out.
Right.
But that's sort of the intent of that. It's not for cars.
Through the chair, I don't believe that's the intent. Certainly it's a landscape space, so
Okay.
that would be the intent of that. But I would also note too, and maybe city staff can potentially clarify this, but it's my understanding that the R8 zone doesn't have common amenity space requirements. I could be wrong on that, but that's something just to note in that respect, because there's a difference between landscaped open space, as I'm sure many of you know, versus the common amenity space as defined in the zoning bylaw. So there very well may not be, but again, I don't want to say that there isn't, for the record. I just don't have that information off the top of my head right now. But
Okay. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Before I move forward, I'd like to remind the audience again to please hold off talking. It is disruptive to those that are sitting with you in the audience and also up here on the podium. Thank you. Councillor Vasek has a question for staff. I just wanted to ask, would you like to ask the question of staff now, or would council like to hear all of the delegations and then determine questions for staff?
I don't think it's going to change it. It's a question about the rendering here. So like, I don't know if any delegate's going to ask this question. It's very specific. And so I just want to ask it now. I think you and I, John, through your chair, Ro, thank you. You and I were talking about this maybe a few years ago. And at one point, it was my understanding that we have a bylaw that prevents parking in front of a dwelling space in the house. Has that bylaw been revoked, and so now this is permitted? This seems beyond site plan if that's still the case, so that's why I asked this.
So through the chair to Councillor Vasek, the zoning bylaw does prevent parking in front of habitable floor space. So that would be an amendment we would look at as we go through the process and determine whether or not it would be required for this application.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Any further questions from council? No? Thank you so much for your presentation. I would now like to invite Jim Whetstone, resident of Waterloo, to come forward, please. You have 10 minutes.
The mayor and council and the chair, thanks very much for having me here today. This is a very important opportunity for us to all speak together, and it's a very important development that's being proposed. I think it's got great potential for significant collaboration between the city and the community and the church itself to come to a great answer for not only this development but future developments with respect to churches and such in this type of zoning situation. And what we want to talk about is how we can work together with the OPA 58, how we can work together with the church's guiding principles themselves, and the community's significant concerns which relate to, which has been talked about a lot already tonight, the amenity space shortfalls, safety, and the traffic impact. So of course, the OPA policy 58 outlines what the growth management policy is for the city of Waterloo, and it outlines how intensification should happen and where it should go, and it's relatively new, so deviating from this significantly would be an interesting situation, I think, notwithstanding the fact that the provincial policy statement requires, of course, looking after everybody from a housing perspective. City Forum is one of the foundational pieces of OPA 58, and it guides how Waterloo is going to grow and how the intensification is going to happen in specific nodes and corridors that are outlined in that guideline. And it outlines that in residential neighborhoods, intensification should be gradual and context sensitive. As currently outlined, this proposal, in my view, does not meet those requirements. Neighborhood scale and character is also part of OPA 58. It ensures that these developments fit comfortably in the space. The main thing there is let's optimize density rather than maximizing density to have a great situation for the entire community. This, as is, does not meet that criteria. Location-specific suitability needs to be appropriate for the place that's proposed. It's in OPA Policy 58. Intensification is supposed to be in nodes and corridors that are outlined in that policy. This is outside the stated intensification areas within that policy. And transportation in complete streets, and again, under OPA 58, that's how to make sure that everything is safe from a transportation perspective, as you know, as is currently proposed, this development, and as has already been commented on at various times in this meeting tonight, does not meet that requirement. And Lexington itself is a neighborhood connector street. But again, this provides great opportunity for great collaboration because OPA 58 provides great detail and support for how we can work together to come to a great solution for all parties involved in the need for housing and the need for redeveloping things like churches. But the community impacts are important as well, of course, as we all work together to better everything here in the city of Waterloo. And the traffic impact here is quite significant. When you add up the Highgate Phase 1, Highgate Phase 2, and now 445 Andale, you're getting close to probably 950, 980 new residents in that vicinity. That's a very close vicinity. You've already commented on Davenport-Lexington intersections, and we're gonna, of course, have Andale-Lexington intersection issues. The traffic impact, you can slice these studies, as you're well aware, depending on who's preparing them and what side of the fence they're on in many different directions, but obviously adding to 445 Andale is going to add probably 3 times the amount per unit trips from a vehicle perspective as compared to Highgate, where of course the residents in a large degree aren't driving quite significantly. The amenity space shortfalls are quite concerning and has been alluded to here on a number of occasions already this evening. One of the important parts is the percentage of green space that's required as part of these types of developments. And, when you take a look at the proposal, the pictures, the green space that's there is narrow, unused spaces of green space where if I take a little jigsaw puzzle and add them all together, I'll get to the 48 or 47% or whatever it's supposed to be. None of it's usable for people in that development whatsoever. And even if you go to the next stage where, it's been said that these types of things will be rectified and outlined. Again, I would ask you where in those pictures with the townhomes already in place, where in those pictures are green space going to be located of any consequence for families and children to play. From a traffic perspective, from a safety perspective, the intersection is obviously quite dangerous. It's already been noted here a number of occasions. It's great to hear that the city is moving forward with traffic calming measures and the like. As of right now, especially with the only way to access this development off of Andale, there's going to be a significant amount of traffic and a significant impact to children that are trying to play and be in the area. Not to mention the fact there's going to be significant street spillover for vehicles onto the neighboring side streets because, while churches are perhaps having a decrease in parishioners, once you consider overnight visitors and such on a Saturday evening that stay till Sunday and you have 35 parking spots, that would be a church that's not going to last very long if that's the amount of parishioners that are going to be there. Again, though, back to the collaboration, we have community all here to talk about this, not to say don't do it, I don't think, but to say let's do it better together and utilize the OPA 58 and utilize the guiding principles of the Christ Lutheran Church that have their own guiding principles to come to a good solution for everybody in the neighborhood and everybody in the greater city of Waterloo. The church has its own guiding principles, which include care for the vulnerable, respecting community needs, neighborhood well-being. Of course, this development does not meet those guiding principles, in my opinion. One of the things that stuck out in particular to me was a 20% subsidized housing component to this development. How do we have a church that has these guiding principles providing only a 20% subsidized housing guiding principle to this development? And I'll ask you, on top of that, a church, like many churches, they don't pay property tax. They're going to have an event here where they create good liquidity for themselves over and above, significantly over and above what they would need to keep the doors open for the next 50 years. I would ask you, how do we not have a green space that has enough play area for children, subsidized housing that is not only 20%, but is higher? The economics and metrics would work for this when you consider the benefits that churches receive and will receive when they complete this transaction. So again, we can work together. We can use OPA 58, those guiding principles. The church should use their guiding principles and our community concerns to come together with some solutions, because as you can see from this space, those green spaces are all along the periphery and little bits, drips and drabs there in front of the buildings and such, which, if I was doing development like this, that's what I would do, and I would have it add up to 47 or 63% or whatever the rule is to meet the criteria, but that's not going to be good for the community, of course. So as an example, to work together, a recommendation might be to remove that. I'm not sure if that's building 1 or building 5, I can't tell.
Mr. Whetstone,
Yes.
Just a reminder, you have 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. To remove that building there that I've struck out, you could create play space there. And if you remove that, you're improving the safety for the community, because we're removing some of the number of people there. The traffic improves. We hit the OPA alignments. And also, this recommendation should include increased subsidized housing to do what's right for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Council, do you have any questions for the delegate? No? Seeing none, thank you so much for your presentation. Our next delegation will be Charles and Carol Roy. Please come forward. You have 5 minutes, and I apologize, I forgot to ask our previous delegates to please just mention the municipality that you live in.
I just have a point of order.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. I apologize. No clapping in chambers. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder, Councillor Bassick.
My name is Carol Roy. I live at 451 Andale, so I am 2 houses down from the unit. We understand that there is a need for more housing, and we're not opposed to that. We're opposed to increasing the maximum building height to 12 meters when it's currently 10. The house next to the church is a raised bungalow. So by the height being high on those townhouses along it removes privacy from that person living there. We've been told that there may be no basements or no garages with these units. Then where is their garbage things go? Where is all of that being taken care of so that it's not an eyesore to the community? We feel that you need more than the 35 parking spaces to be shared with the church and the visitors, because there's 57 spaces for the units. If no parking on the street, if that street in the property has no parking, then, and the amount of parking spaces you've allowed we do not want people parking out on Andale. Right now, we get that periodically, and in the winter, we can't get a fire truck down if there's parking on either side of Andale. So parking would have to be restricted right to Whitmore, which isn't fair to the house that lives right across from the church. Traffic flow presently is terrible coming out of Andale. Many times you can't get left, lots of times you can't get right unless somebody lets you in. So that at present, the traffic flow is bad without adding the number of units and cars that will be coming out as close to Lexington as would be with this proposed unit. And another thing I'm concerned about is a buffer between the first single house and the townhouses. What is being planned to give them their privacy? Right now, there's a line of beautiful evergreen trees. But if they come out in the building, then there is no buffer for privacy for that home. Even it has a whole long lot. And us, the next one, if you have a third floor looking down on your property, there is no privacy for you. So in that is all that I am stating. I just want to come together so that it's good for everybody and everything is taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Council, does anyone have questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming and speaking this evening. No clapping in the chamber. Thank you. All right, our next delegate is Annie Caroline Dixon. Please
May
come
I
forward.
say another point of order? Do you want to
I did.
explain why there's no
I'll
clapping?
let-
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Through the chair, it may be helpful if I explain that the reason that we ask for no talking is that people around you are trying to listen to questions and answers, and I'm witnessing some people getting visibly frustrated not being able to do so. The reason that we say no clapping is that everyone needs to feel comfortable to come up and speak at the microphone if they wish. They may have a different opinion than the person speaking before them. So since this is a public meeting where everyone is invited to come up and speak, we want everyone to feel comfortable in doing that and not feel intimidated by others that may be clapping or booing based on other remarks.
Thank you for clarifying. Hi, you're welcome to go ahead. You have 5 minutes, and please just state your municipality. You don't need to state your street address.
Yep, I'm actually here representing my mother, who is the house directly across the proposed build. So she's at 446 Andale. Due to health restrictions, she hasn't been able to attend tonight. So my siblings and I, a few of us, have come on her behalf. So traffic congestion, safety has already been talked about by others, so I don't want to spend too much of my time talking about that. We don't feel that the amount of parking for that shared usage is sufficient for the number of dwellings that would be proposed to be built. We wanted to mention as well that there are school bus routes that come and drop kids off on Andale Road. One of the stops is right in front of my mother's home, which is right in front of the driveway that's proposed to have all of the outgoing traffic. So they're proposing a one-way road that goes around the exterior, comes through the church, and then all of the traffic will leave and go right into my mom's driveway, basically. And that's where that first student drop-off is. So safety for students is a really big issue there. At this time, it's very difficult to exit and go in either direction from her driveway with the current state of traffic on that street. So that's a problem. And then adding an additional at least 57 plus cars to, let alone delivery vehicles and Ubers and taxis and such to that is going to make it even more so difficult for her. We also wanted to discuss the current infrastructure hasn't been touched on too much. So we've lived in that home for 38 years, and there has been no sewer or storm updates to those streets since we've lived there. And that was all proposed with the residential zone 1 and residential zone 3, which doesn't have multi-unit dwellings or didn't at that time. At this point, how can we assume that with the Highgate build, the proposed new build, as well as this additional build, is the current sewer system going to be able to maintain the amount of gray and black water that will be leaving these new builds? Finally, and one of the things that is most concerning for myself comes down to the fact that they're looking to sever at a later date. So when I'm looking at their drawing of what the proposed site is going to be, a lot of what I see as their 46%, so I see in rural zone 8, or in the residential zone 8, they require a minimum of 45% that has not covered by, I'm assuming, building. I don't see that in there. And from what I see in the image that that they provided with the red dotted outlines, when it's severed, they're going to be severing the church, all of the common parking, and half of that proposed green space that we're looking at that was all paved, which leads all the way down to the driveway. So they're going to have to create easements to allow for the community to be able to access and exit through their church things, as well as that one townhouse unit. Some of that has been connected because it can't be built otherwise, right? Because it has to have that easement from the church. So our concern is what's going to happen after it gets severed. Like, are we approving this at a current state where everything's together and we meet our 46% or 45% that's required, that's not covered, and then once it severs, what's the current state, or what is the state of that build that they're proposing to create? And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Council, do you have any questions for the delegate? Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, and thanks
Yeah.
to the previous delegates for coming in as well and you know, participating in the process. We really do appreciate it. Just a quick question: when you're talking about the difficulty coming out out of your mother's
my mom's
driveway, what times of the day is that?
All the time.
Okay.
Pretty much all the time. So I want to say in the early 90s, we had to actually request the city install no parking zones on Sundays specifically because we had parishioners blocking our entire exit from our driveway. So this has been a problem for 38 years that we've lived there, and it's only getting worse and worse as more traffic is coming and more things are being built.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, of course.
Councillor Vasek.
Thanks. Through you, Chair Rowe. You bring up a good point about the buses as well. Sorry, this is a question for staff, I should have said, when I could ask that on, from your delegation.
I think that's fine because I don't think there are any other questions.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Rowe, are you working with Waterloo Region School Transportation Services on some of the bus drop-off pickup, any changes that might happen because of this proposal?
So through the chair to Councillor Vasek, great question. We do talk to STSWR, Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region. If it is a concern and is brought forward to our attention, we don't know where all the stops are all the time, and they do move around. But if it is a concern, it is definitely one that we will talk to. It's not necessarily, we don't forward these applications all the time, so it's kind of on an ad hoc basis.
Would this be considered ad hoc because it was brought up? Yeah, okay, thanks.
I would say yes.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. I didn't realize we could ask questions of staff right now. So I'll just, her comments about severing, I don't know if that's a Madison or a John question. Can you speak to, I'm just wondering if you could maybe provide a bit of information for the delegate and others here around her comments around severing and when that may occur or may not occur, or how that might impact this.
For sure. Through Councillor Rowe, and thank you very much for mentioning that. It's a really important detail that we have to think about. Will the site comply with the regulations as it is today? But after the severance, will it comply on their own? Will the church comply and will the townhouses comply? And so that is a detail that we're looking at. Ultimately, when they come in for the severance, that line could shift based on what the final site design looks like. So if they decide to put it a playground area and they need to shift that severance line, those sort of details will happen later. And that's why the severance is later in the process, because it really is dependent on the final design. But then at that point, we still need to make sure they comply with all the regulations. So it is a detail that we'll be looking at through this review to make sure that when we bring this back to council for a final recommendation, we'll be able to say yes or no whether it does or not comply. So thanks for highlighting that.
Of course.
Thanks, John, for explaining that or providing that additional detail, because planning's a really complex process, and there's a lot of, some of the questions that you've had, depending how we vote on this, and there's a lot of work to do from tonight till, to wherever this process goes, because this is, as we said, the first time we've seen this. So But some of the things that you're raising are things that are dealt with further in the process. So just wanted to, so you're aware of that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions, Council? I have one for staff, and I'm wondering if you could just give us a high-level overview of how infrastructure works in terms of new developments and how that is monitored or taken into consideration as proposals come forward.
Sure. It's a very good question, and something that the city is looking at comprehensively overall as a city to see how our infrastructure handling capacities that we have predicted for growth to occur. And then when a development comes in, they have to provide the studies to prove that, yes, they're not going to tip the scales and exceed those capacities. And if they do, they have to upgrade the pipes in order to make their development proceed. So that happens in Northdale quite a bit. In this area, they provided a study. It's being reviewed, and we'll compare it to our modeling to make sure that the pipes can handle it both for water supply as well as for sewers. And so it is a detail that we'll be looking at to make sure that if this density does get approved, that the infrastructure can handle that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming in and speaking. I would now like to welcome Amy Denstedt forward. You have 5 minutes. And just state your municipality, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council and my Colonial Acre neighbors. My name is Amy Denstedt. I live at 251 Whitmore Drive, which I think is important to say, directly across from the proposed development. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I support additional housing in Waterloo. My concern is not with the development itself, but with the timing and cumulative impact of several overlapping projects mentioned today that will all affect the same neighborhood at the same time. These include the Lexington Road redesign, the proposed development at 215 Lexington Road, also known as the Highgate, the proposed development at 445 Andale Road, as well as the Whitmore Drive reconstruction, scheduled for spring 2027, which has not been mentioned tonight. Individually, each project affects traffic, safety, and parking. Together, they create a level of disruption and intensification that I believe has not yet been evaluated in a coordinated way. Traffic and safety concerns are already well documented. The Lexington Road study was initiated due to ongoing congestion, and in 2024, the Lexington and Davenport intersection was identified as one of the top 10 most dangerous intersections for both drivers and pedestrians in Waterloo. When Lexington Road was closed for 4 days last month for emergency water main repairs, Whitmore Drive saw a significant spike in cut-through traffic, a clear preview of what will occur during the full reconstruction. Construction traffic on Andale Road will add further pressure. Lane reductions and construction vehicles will divert traffic onto side streets such as Lee Avenue and Whitmore Drive, neither of which have sidewalks or traffic calming measures in place. Directing vehicles onto streets without basic pedestrian infrastructure introduces avoidable risks for families and children walking in the area. During the Lexington study, residents raised concerns about Whitmore Drive. City staff indicated the street would be reviewed under a separate program. However, to my knowledge, this has not occurred. The only related initiative, the Whitmore Drive Reconstruction Plan, addresses only half of the street and will not begin until 2027. Because Whitmore connects immediately to Andale Road and currently lacks sidewalks, a full-length traffic and safety review should be completed before additional intensification proceeds. Sidewalks are limited throughout Colonial Acres, forcing residents, including children, to walk and wait directly on the road. Currently, children stand on the roadway or on neighbors' lawns while waiting for school buses, and the Andale and Whitmore corner sees at least 3 school buses, both morning and night. Any increase in traffic or overflow parking will heighten the risk to these children who already have limited safe space. Parking pressures are also a serious concern. The 445 Andale Road proposal falls short of bylaw parking requirements, which we discussed tonight. Together, these projects introduce a substantial parking deficit that will push overflow parking onto Andale Road, Whitmore Drive, and nearby residential streets, all of which are narrow and heavily used by pedestrians. As someone living on the corner of Andale and Whitmore, I see the impact of parking overflow firsthand. When events are held at the church at any time of the day or week, cars routinely line both Andale and Whitmore. This is already a challenge today, and the proposed development will intensify it. My question to council is straightforward. How will the city coordinate these projects in a way that protects residents from compounded congestion, safety risks, and parking pressures? Without a coordinated plan, residents who have invested significantly in their homes may face years of construction noise, detours, pedestrian hazards, overflow parking, and potential delays in emergency response.
Just a reminder that you're at the 1 minute mark.
Thank you. I'm not asking council to stop development. I'm asking for thoughtful, safety-conscious planning that considers the broader context. I respectfully ask council to delay approval of the 445 Andale Road development until the Lexington Road improvements are complete and traffic can be reassessed. Ensure parking deficiencies at both addresses are addressed through underground parking or a reduction in units. And finally, install at minimum temporary traffic calming measures on Lee Avenue during the Lexington Road redesign and throughout construction related to 445 Andale Road development. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Council, do we have any questions for the delegate? No questions. Thank you so much. I just want to remind delegates coming forward that you only need to mention the municipality, the city. We are streamed on YouTube, so that is a privacy feature that maintains your privacy. Okay. Our last delegate is Laura, excuse me for how I'm going to pronounce your last name, Gian Gregario.
Thank you. I will probably repeat some of the things because I don't have time to rewrite my speech right now. So, Mayor and members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. As I said, I'm from the region of Waterloo, by the way. I live in the neighborhood. I support increasing urban density. I do not oppose the redevelopment of this space. I think it's great to provide homes for our community. I do have some concerns about traffic and safety and a few other things that others have mentioned. This is one of the busiest corners in our area. At peak times, traffic backs up daily along Lexington, and that's a single lane. I don't know if everyone knows that. So it's a single lane road. It backs up daily. Turning onto Lexington is challenging at peak times. Adding 57 new homes as well as the continued church use will have potentially 30 to 60 more during peak hours. That is a huge increase for a residential street that has limited traffic calming measures. As was heard, there is a concurrent proposal, and I think the traffic impact report needs to be reconsidered in the context of that, the other developments that are happening in the area, because I don't think that was done. The traffic impact study claims negligible impact, but it assumes that the existing infrastructure is sufficient. It does not propose any mitigation measures, which was surprising to me. So there's no traffic calming proposed, no other signals or anything like that. As was heard, adding these homes will likely push cars through the adjacent streets. And something that wasn't mentioned was the streets are really long, so they're 400 meters straight. They don't curve, so it's really easy to pick up speed. So it's not just that they're going to go through these additional neighborhood streets, but they can speed through them really quickly because of the design of the streets. And they, as was mentioned, they don't have sidewalks. And then in the winter, it becomes a bit narrower because you have piling up of snow on the sides of the streets. So you're going to have people walking on the streets, and people are going to try to speed through there. We already see this happen. Anytime there is construction on Bridge or Lexington or some sort of, traffic accident, people will use the Whitmore primarily as a thoroughfare, and we see people speeding through there. The blocks that contain the two places where our entire neighborhood can access Lexington Road have been identified in the Lexington Road Complete Street Study as having higher than expected collision occurrences. This proposal, combined with other proposals, will add to the 14,000 vehicles per day that use this single lane corridor. It is a primary fire route, so I don't know if that's been mentioned. The increase in traffic volume may contribute to collisions and road blockages, which could then increase emergency response times. And I just ask that perhaps be considered. There are 35 shared spaces. Zoning bylaw requires 68, that's been mentioned, so a shortfall of 50%. There's only one parking space per unit and 0 dedicated visitor spaces, right? So it's a shared parking approach, but I don't think this is realistic because it assumes that only half of people attending service require a car, that few homes will have 2 cars, and there will be limited overlap at peak times. Overflow parking will spill out onto residential streets, creating congestion, safety hazards, and problems with waste pickup and snow removal. These streets are not designed for continuous curbside parking. Overflow parking on Andale already happens at peak church-going times because there's not one but 2 churches in proximity. Again, this is the 2-church situation I don't think was considered in the traffic report, so the peak church parking situation is doubled. We need to use space efficiently to provide housing for our community. The city's official plan requires new development to respect and reinforce existing physical patterns, lot sizes, building height, setbacks. The proposal introduces stacked townhouses, which is an overdevelopment relative to the surrounding low-rise, low-density residential area. Intensification should be context-sensitive with appropriate transitions. So the transitions, I think, is another issue that hasn't been mentioned. So not a sudden jump to medium density with abrupt changes in mass, scale, and intensity. The 12-meter thing has already been mentioned. I'm also concerned that
Just
the
a quick
taller
reminder
buildings
at the
Yeah,
1 minute
got it.
mark.
Taller buildings close to the corner will affect visibility for traffic and pedestrians, so I don't think that's been mentioned either. To align with the official plan, 57-unit development with no backyards that I can see should have more green space, shared areas, or play areas. This also sets a precedent for converting other R1 lots to R8, which accelerates densification beyond what the official plan for Waterloo envisions for low-rise neighborhoods. I support diversity and growth, but it must be balanced, safe, and compatible with existing neighborhoods and bylaws. This proposal fails on traffic safety, parking adequacy, and neighborhood character. I urge the council to reject the request for rezoning and bylaw exemptions and work with the applicant on alternatives. Thanks for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you so much. Council, are there any questions? Councillor Vasek?
Thanks. You just happen to be the last one here, but I've had this question over and over again today and many other times, and so I don't mean to put you on the spot. It just,
Okay.
yeah.
I can say I don't know, right?
Yeah, totally. Also, I looked you up and you're a professor, so even though you're probably nervous here.
Not in urban planning, though.
No, but you know how to speak in front of people. But this is a different context, and it is nerve-wracking, so I definitely acknowledge that. The official plan is it's a long-term guiding policy document required by the province. It also, embedded into it is the idea that there is going to be change to the official plan through big changes, like when we review it, but also through changes to specific properties. So often what we hear from people when they come in is, we should stick to the plan, stick to what's there. But when the idea that change is going to happen is embedded into the plan, I'm not sure how to reconcile this idea when community comes and says you shouldn't change it because it's a plan, but the plan says, you're going to change me sometimes. What's council supposed to do?
I'm supposed to say through the chair, is that the right?
You got it, I didn't.
Okay. So I think it would be fine if the change to the plan was to the benefit of the community, but I'm not seeing change. Like, there's a lot of changes here that are being proposed that are potentially going to cause harm. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, why have a plan if you're not going to stick to it? Like, why, like, you want to stick within the limits with the intentions of the plan. So if you have intentions of, creating urban density, but also considering urban design guidelines, then fine. If you have a slight change, but you're still aligned with the good intentions of land use and sustainable land use and having play spaces and, thinking about shared spaces. So that's the other thing, is like the whole shared space thing it's been mentioned by several people, and we kind of play lip service to our Indigenous acknowledgements and stuff, but these are things that are really important to people in thinking about the land and how we use it. And I feel like it's not being considered here. I think we're trying to maximize the number of dwellings on this property, and that seems to me not aligned with kind of the intentions of the plan.
Okay, yeah, thanks for your perspective. I feel like we could go back and forth on this for some time, so I won't put everybody through that. But I appreciate your perspective on it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Bodley.
Sorry, I just had a question for staff on this point. And this is maybe just a point of clarification through you, Chair Rowe. The delegate is not proposing an official plan amendment, and so my understanding here is that it is compliant with the official plan as it currently stands. Is that fair to say?
Through Chair Rowe, that is correct. The official plan does permit the proposed development. We're going to double check to make sure it does meet all those requirements. It's really just the zoning bylaw, which is the more finer detailed review. And so that's why the application is just a zoning amendment, not an official plan amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, Council? Mayor McCabe?
Thanks. A couple things I wanted to ask, and then also to make note of for people who are here, and again, we really appreciate the interest in this and people coming. So thank you very much for making time tonight. For people who can't see staff, I just want you to know that staff and the developer here, they're making copious notes about comments that people are saying. Okay, so I just want to make sure you know that staff and council, that we're listening to what you're saying. And so I just had a couple questions about, there was a couple of people who raised concerns about, again, the overall, Jenny, this is for you, the overall coordination of some of the development and the traffic and the overflow, and there's no sidewalks on, in some of the side streets. I mean, my understanding is there's no, first, I was curious why there are no sidewalks there, but I think if I'm remembering, it's because of a cultural heritage landscape piece. Anyway, you can explain that to me about why there's no sidewalks right there. But I'm just wondering if you could kind of give an explanation for how all those things like don't work separately, but you are looking at it as a collective piece from the Lexington Road redevelopment completion to emergency response to the sidewalk piece and safety of the kids and pedestrians and everyone in the area. Could you just maybe give us an overview of how you approach a project like this?
Absolutely. Through the chair to the mayor, there is a lot going on in this area, and it will take some time for staff to make sure that we are coordinating all these things. First of all, so emergency services do get the plans. They do review them. They do look at them. They are part of our review of the Lexington Complete Street as well. And so in terms of response times, they are at the table with us talking. And we hear them and we go through their opinions as well, so they know full well what's coming. And if they have any concerns, we do what we need to do to address them. When there is construction in any area, construction is messy, it is inconvenient, and sometimes it's a necessary evil for some things. We do our best. So an example of some of the other construction where we've had some impacts on neighboring communities, when Bridge Street was under construction, we put temporary traffic calming on Auburn. And that had a very good impact on the neighborhood and on the traffic. So that is something that we will look at for this particular area. We'll look at, if it's required for a temporary traffic calming on Whitmore, on Lee, and we'll be looking to make sure that the staging of construction, that, if it's, so Whitmore reconstruction 2027, we will work with making sure that that is coordinated in amongst with development construction and lots of notice out to people, and we work with the contractors. The other thing is for Lexington reconstruction, there is no date. It's not in the budget right now. And so we are just doing detailed design, and staff will be bringing forward the plans and a potential request for a future later date for reconstruction. So there is nothing in the books today for Lexington. So we don't know when that's going to be done, but that'll all be all the years, everything will be kind of brought into. That's also why we ask developers when they do the traffic impact study to give us horizon years. So we're looking at not necessarily, even if it's stage 1 development, when are they going to open, 5 years from when they're going to open, so we can kind of get an idea of the level of traffic that is going to be here today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so that we can start to plan how we can move people around and keep them going. I'm trying to think of, no sidewalks in the neighborhood. This is, it's an older neighborhood with rural cross-section. As I understand it, there are some, and I'm looking over to my commissioner and director of city utilities. I think there are some underlying servicing as well issues in this area that make it complex to turn this into an urban cross-section from a rural cross-section. So there's a lot of factors in play. So I don't know if Commissioner Orbson wants to add to that.
Through you, Chair Rowe, to the Mayor, and thanks to Ms. Setterfield for those good answers. A couple things, Mayor. There is no date for construction of Lexington Road. It's simply for design work. So that's one thing that is important to flag. The Whitmore Drive reconstruction is actually limited from Lee Avenue to Bridge Street, so it's quite a distance away from this proposed development. So we would coordinate any construction there with the network. And then Colonial Acre sidewalks, there is some historical and cultural landscape considerations. Sidewalks are not proposed for those streets at the current time, and as Ms. Setterfield noted, there are a number of properties that are still on septic systems. There's no stormwater network, there's no curbs, there's none of the other type of infrastructure that would support the reconstruction of those roads with sidewalks right now. Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful to just understand more about in the context of this. So I appreciate that fulsome discussion or response. My last question is just to Madison or John, just about the because there's 20% proposal of 20% affordable housing in this proposed development. Can you comment on is that typical that it's 20%? Because I feel like mostly when we get development applications in, it's more like 5-ish%. Can you just maybe speak to the amount of affordable housing that's proposed there?
Through Chair Rowe to Mayor McCabe, that is correct. Usually larger developments, they propose a lower rate overall percentage-wise. Now, if it's a 25-story building, 3% is a higher number per se of units-wise, but 20% is a large portion of this development. And it is something that we'll be looking at as to how do we secure that and how do we ensure the long-term retention of affordable housing units. So this is a piece of the puzzle. But overall, we're still looking at the big picture of will it have enough parking? Are the setbacks appropriate? Those bigger, more critical details in terms of the massing of the project, et cetera.
Thanks very much.
I will now ask if there is anyone else present tonight? Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize, Julie. Councillor Wright. I'm moving too quickly now, sorry.
This is just a clarification from that last conversation. So, through you, Chair, I'm just wondering, where in the documents does it say the 20% subsidized? I've been looking all over the place for that. Like when I was making my notes from the Engage reports, I didn't see that anywhere. So I'm trying to figure out where it was.
Through Chair Rowe, I don't recall exactly either, but it's something we'll address in our final report when we bring it back to Council.
Any further questions, Council? I will now ask if there is anyone else present tonight who wishes to speak to this application. If you could please come forward. State your name and municipality of residence, and you have 5 minutes. There is a button on the left-hand side of the, thank you, John.
Oh, sure, thank you. No, that's good, thank you. Hi. Okay, my name is Melissa, and I live in Waterloo, and I'm here to fight for the green space. If this new development is approved, I'll be one of the many gardeners that...
Sorry, Melissa, can you provide your last name, please?
Oh, Greshner.
Thank you.
Thank you. If this new development is approved, I'd be one of the many gardeners that would be losing their plot at this community garden. I look back on a day when I was coming home from the Kitchener Market with a flat of plants in my lap. I lived near Conestoga Mall and used transit. The bus arrived at the mall, the driver put down the ramp, and just as I was trying to exit the bus,
I overhear a lady say she can garden, but she can't walk, under her breath. Community gardens exist, but not accessible ones. We, the disabled, aren't seen as gardeners. When I discovered the community garden at Andale, I was elated. I immediately applied for a plot and waited 3 years on a wait list. The day it was approved, there are no words for the excitement that I felt. I've since been a gardener at Andale for the past 3 years. It's more than a garden. It's an outlet where I can be physically active, build and retain my strength, and be a part of the community in such a healthy and positive way. With the help of loved ones, I was able to create a space that was accessible to me. In this space, I am seen, not as disabled, but as a gardener that has shifted others' views and has impressed many. And not just any gardener, but one that cares about the community. Upon joining, I was made aware of what is called the seniors plot. This is a raised plot that would feature flowers that would bring joy to the seniors that lived in the area. I was told that when COVID hit, and for the years after, this plot was abandoned and neglected. When I joined in 2023, I immediately jumped in and out of my own pocket and time. And in addition to my own plot, I've been maintaining that plot and planting flowers ever since for the seniors to enjoy. This community garden brings me joy, but it also brings so much joy to others. To lose it, to lose everything that myself and others have rooted, would be heartbreaking. That's it.
Thank you so much. Council, does anyone have a question for the delegate? No, that's okay. No questions? Oh, yes, sorry. Yes. For staff? Certainly, Councillor Bodley.
Sorry. First of all, thank you for coming. And I know in some of the volunteer-run city community gardens that are on city facilities, I know how impactful having some accessible units have been. In my ward, there are accessible gardening units in the community garden in Vista Hills. Yeah, and it's beautiful. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story here tonight about how impactful that is for you personally. And I would just highlight. I just wanted to highlight to staff whether if this is something that may possibly be considered. I know the proponent had noted that the community space, the amenity space, the shared space, that's something that comes out in the detailed design. And given the history of this garden on this site, perhaps that's something that we might want to look at speaking to the proponent about, including and in particular based on the delegate that we heard this evening, the potential of having accessible raised platform garden beds would be wonderful. So I just wanted to highlight that on as a possibility when we're moving forward. Thanks.
For clarity, my own garden isn't raised. I actually get out of the wheelchair and on my hands and knees I garden. But for the raised plot for the seniors, I maintain more than myself, or my own plot is what I'm trying to say, but yeah, thanks.
Council, any further questions? Thank you so much. All right. I saw a couple other hands of delegates. If you could show me who, yes, please come forward, state your name and last name and municipality, please.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Tanya Otterson-Lees. I'm a resident of region of Waterloo. So at the beginning, we talked about a story. So I'm going to give a little story about myself. So 21 years ago, it was time to look for a new place of residence because it was time that we raise a family. Took us a year. We found Old Colonial Acres. If anybody here has been in Old Colonial Acres, you walk through it. It's not just a neighborhood. It is a community. Every resident that lives there is pride through and through. You walk through the area, it's serene, it's calming. There's no sidewalks. Everybody in the neighborhood is friendly. We go for walks, we say hello, and I could go on, but you need to experience yourself. I can say full-heartedly, there's not many residents or neighborhoods or communities in Waterloo where everybody feels welcome, everybody says hi to you, no one's busy on their phone, not looking up, but it's welcoming. People are on the street walking. There's children we have seen grow up throughout the neighborhood. There are some homes where children grew up and now they live with their family and two that house they grew up. So yes, it's a community. People are not here today, unfortunately, but want to be, to speak up. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here today and speak from the heart. Yes, we need development. That happens. I don't know how many of you remember the last time the whole neighborhood, the whole community from Old Colonial Acres came together and fought, I'll say with heart. There was a development that was to go at Lexington and Bridge that went from many townhouses to 3 homes were put up. And that was very, I'll say, we're fine with that. But now proposing this townhouse, and at the time, let me back up a bit. What went forth from there is our neighborhood was labeled as now heritage, which means single dwelling homes. So I'm kind of confused why there is a development that is being proposed to, I mean, we have bylaws, we have zoned areas. If it was zoned as heritage, single dwelling, why is that now being looked at changing? So I think a lot of thought, I know a lot has been said today, and I don't want to repeat what has been said. You've all made notes. But I really encourage the council come together over the next month or 2 and consider, look at the region of Waterloo as a whole. Look at what different areas there in Waterloo where this development company could go to instead to build their townhouses and maybe change our area that they're proposing by the church to a few homes versus 57 homes. And I encourage you to come to our area, walk through there, feel the community, feel the calmingness. Look at the homes. We are a very, very proud neighborhood. And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. I do not know how many neighborhoods, how many communities there are in Waterloo where you will get that same vibe, that same feeling of families, of children, of grandchildren, of grandparents, great-grandparents, being able to walk and feel comfortable. I realize there is a minute left. And also the Highgate residents, you see them with their personal support workers walking up and down Whitmore in different areas because they know they don't have to worry about traffic. So thank you again for this time, for this meeting, and I hope that you'll listen to the voices and any emails that are sent your way. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Mayor McCabe?
Thanks very much for your comments. I just wanted to make sure we're clear based on what staff said, because we're not changing, the area is zoned for this type of development. So that is already in, we're not changing that part of it. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, could you maybe just explain that again, John? Okay, you can explain it better than me.
So through the chair to Mayor McCabe, the property is currently zoned residential 1, which permits single detached buildings. The applicant's looking to rezone to residential 8, which would permit townhouses. So would be going from the change from single detached to townhouses.
Right, okay. So my question though to you is, I'm just trying to picture where you were referring to when you said there was another area that had some development proposed. It's along Bridgeport. Is that where those really large, I would call them monster homes, or is that where those are now along that street?
No, a few years ago, the area was right on Lexington and Birch Street. They were proposing some townhouses go there, and instead it was changed, then they ended up putting 3 homes there instead.
But they're really quite large homes, right? That are about 10 stories high, or 10 meters high?
So Lexington and Bridge Street.
Yeah.
So they're the average size homes that are there. And I mean, that was fine because there's homes. I mean, there was traffic issues, and I mean, that's been discussed already. So, personally, and a lot of residents I've been speaking to, we'd be fine with a few homes going there. But to put 57 homes, we all know everybody drives at least from 57 homes. I'm sure there's 40 that have 2 vehicles, and we've talked about the overspill of traffic. And so do you know what I mean by Lexington and Bridge Street?
I know that area.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't picture the homes.
Yeah.
I
Take a
wasn't-
drive.
okay. Yeah.
There's a
Okay.
light there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Council, any further questions for the delegate? Councillor Vasek.
Thanks, through you, Chair Rowe. I'm sorry, I can't stop myself on this particular delegation. One, it sounds lovely, your neighborhood. Do you know when the first Highgate building went up, there was large neighborhood pushback? That Lexington divides Councillor Freeman's ward and the ward I represent, Ward 5. There was major pushback. And now, today, you've come to us telling us that the folks who live there have lovely walks through your neighborhood. And so there was a time when people in the neighborhood didn't want Highgate there. They didn't want the residents who are now living at Highgate and enjoying the neighborhood. So I have no opinions on this particular application at this time. But I'm having a really hard time listening to people saying, not just today, but over and over, we don't want new neighbors in our lovely neighborhood. So what would you tell a councillor like me who's clearly having a bit of a visceral reaction to this message over and over again, to help me really gain some empathy for what you're telling me?
So I have to address you from chair, is that right? So when you look at the Highgate community, it's retirement home, assisted living. So when we look at far as traffic, not many of them have vehicles. So they come into our neighborhood because they feel safe, because there's no sidewalks, which is wonderful. They feel safe to go for walks, whether it's assisted or whether they're on their own. Because again, our area is very serene, it's very calming. They feel comfortable walking in our neighborhood. Now that you're going to possibly, if this goes through, allow more traffic, where are those residents of Highgate, the current and the future, where are they going to walk now where they feel safe, where they feel this calming sereneness happen? I mean, I could go on and on talking about mental wellness and getting outside. I mean, Region of Waterloo, the council talks about how important it is that we create green space, how important it is to get outside, how important it is mentally for a well-being. If this goes through, you're taking away that green space, you're taking away that wellness, that mental wellness, the well-being of the residents of Highgate. And that is because with the new townhomes, again, 57, you're adding more traffic. You're adding more homes. So now that safe space is no longer there. We need to take care of our older adults as well. That doesn't answer your question?
I just don't have any further questions. Thanks for answering mine.
Okay.
Thank you. If there are no more questions of the delegate, I would like to ask if there's anyone else present here who would like to speak. Craig, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Craig Sloss. I live in Waterloo. I just wanted to briefly touch on a little detail that wasn't really talked about much earlier, which is the transit connectivity in the area. So I realize I'm bringing up a tricky problem because it's not one that you can solve on your own because transit's a regional concern, but hoping that in your capacity as advocates to other levels of government, maybe you can look at this a little bit more closely. So the development's supposed to be is supposed to have some affordable housing in it, and I want to acknowledge the fact that if you have affordable housing in areas where transportation is expensive, then it kind of undoes the effect, right? So myself, I live in a protected major transit station area. So I'm able to get around using just the ION, and because of that, that made my own unit a lot more affordable because I didn't need to buy a parking spot. I didn't need to pay for the ongoing costs of parking, right? So I think if you want to build affordable housing, you have to think carefully about the transit connectivity to ensure that the transportation also remains affordable. So the one thing I noticed during the presentation is that there were 3 GRT routes cited in the area, 29, the 31, and the 6. I quickly looked up the schedules for these, and all 3 routes have 30-minute headways. So I would hope that, especially since Mayor McCabe sits on the regional council and it is budget season, so this is perhaps a good opportunity for this to collaborate with our regional colleagues to advocate for increased frequency on those routes to support the increased density in the area. I guess my ask is basically to have closer collaboration between the city, which controls the density, and the region, which controls the transit connectivity. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions of council? Thank you. I did see another hand. Please come forward. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Marfisi. I'm a resident of Waterloo. I'm here to speak from a perspective of people that aren't often represented in these conversations, relatively young people, all emphasis on relatively, including renters who are not sure what the future looks like for us in this region. Our generation is being priced out of Waterloo. According to the Provincial Land Registry, the average age of a home buyer in Ontario is 40. That is 6 years higher than a decade ago. As we face long waits for ownership, we desperately need more purpose-built rentals. We need market rate rentals, and we have a dire need for more affordable units. This project addresses both of those needs and voluntarily includes an amount of subsidized units that is far higher, as at least as what we've heard so far, as a percentage than most cities are implementing for inclusionary zoning. One of the most common criticisms you usually hear about condos or rental projects is that there's a dearth of 3-bedroom units for families. In 2021 in Toronto, for example, only 10% of new rentals were comprised of 3-bedroom units. A recently approved 39-story project near the Uptown Mall had only 10% of units allocated for 3 bedrooms. This project is over 2.5 times both of those numbers, which I think is impressive. All of that being said, I live in a complex similar to this proposal that is on a 4-lane road in Waterloo that is essentially a highway. There's wide pathways, but in many ways, to be charitable, the pedestrian experience is hostile, especially at intersections. Future road redesigns in this neighborhood sound like a chance to do better in listening to resident concerns about traffic and safety. I'll end with a rhetorical question. We've heard comments in other agenda items tonight about the importance of retaining young adults in our community and young families. I think renters, young families, and young adults should be able to share in the communities of all neighborhoods in this city. If we aren't maximizing the amount of purpose-built rentals in the city when and where we can, where are we supposed to go? Because in many cases, it is out of this city, and that is not sustainable long-term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil. Council, any questions for the delegate? No. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll ask a final time. Is there anyone here who would like to speak? Please come forward, state your name and municipality.
Thank you, Council. My name is Brendan. I live in Kitchener, but I am one of the gardeners who, I guess, rents a plot of land. I'd just like to agree with a lot of what everyone was saying. I'll try to be quick. The idea that the church hasn't been paying property taxes for how many years and is only putting so much forward for affordable units is interesting and is good for council to think on, as well as the 47% dedicated to green space, which was kind of insulting when it's just the single pieces of Lego in front of everyone's house, that it's quite obvious to everyone here that's not 47% green space. I do like the location it's at. I think when we look at the floor plan or the blueprint, as it were, of the area, it is just a good start. It has everything everyone wants, density, that kind of thing. But it's just something in the little details like the lack of green space or just looking at the droughts of the buildings, I noticed a real lack of windows. So when I was on the meeting on the 20th at the church, I noticed some of the floor plans for the units. You're looking at 700 square foot basements, 1,200 foot 2-bedroom units. They're not what I would call large, so the classic min-maxing of units. So maybe council can work with developers to make bigger windows, just to make it a little more homely, I guess, just real quick. And again, just the idea of a really beautiful community garden getting plowed over just kind of sucks, but it'd be cool if we could just work together to have the best of both worlds, I guess. So thank you kindly.
Thank you so much. Council, any questions of the delegate?
Yeah, I'll take questions.
Anyone? We're good? I'm afraid I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for speaking. And I did see another hand there. Yes, please come forward. State your name and municipality, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Catherine Schmidt. I live in Kitchener, but my mother lives in Waterloo. I just had a question. I don't know if you can answer questions like that. But under the R1, how many houses would be able to be built in this space in comparison to what's being proposed?
Yes.
Okay,
so sorry.
that's, no?
Thank you. No, that's okay. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you. I'll ask the question of staff. Please, could you let us know how many could be built in the R1?
I apologize through Chair to Councillor Hamner. It's not an answer we have readily available, but we can provide that answer later after the meeting.
Thank you.
My only other comment is I think it would go a long way if there was a large park provided like for the kids and for the other children that live in the area to use, or grandchildren, so on.
Councillor Vasek.
Thanks so much. I'll ask a question of staff in order to provide a bit of context for that specific comment now. This would be for Commissioner Van Ootengam. I've never said that your last name, is that right? Oh, I'll ask later. Yeah. As part of our 3-year capital budget in the last 2 council terms, for sure this council term, and I believe it was in my first council term, we have money allocated for Lexington Park, which is proposed for Bridge and Lexington. There's some money allocated in the 3-year budget this year. I was just looking at the budget sheet today, actually. For, I think it looked a lesser amount, so probably for some design, I suspect. I don't know. And then more for next year. So can you talk a little bit about intentions for that park and green and play space?
Through you, Chair Rowe, to Councillor Vasek. I think that's a question that I would probably have to take back to our parks team, just to get that specific information for you, but I'd be happy to do that after the meeting.
Do you know if that's where like the baseball diamonds and soccer field, is that the location you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So if you were to Google City of Waterloo budget, you could, okay, that's fine. Too much. That's fine. You can reach out to someone.
Yeah. I was just curious if that's the location you were speaking of. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, final call. Anyone else here tonight who would like to speak? No? Okay. If there are no more delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. Our next item on the agenda is the Uptown Community Improvement Plan. This is a formal public meeting to consider item 13B, Uptown Community Improvement Plan CIP update. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate register in the binder located on the desk at the rear of council chambers. If there is more than one binder, please make sure you are signing the appropriate one. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the KW Record on November 24th, 2025. An informal public meeting was not held.
Thank you. Dominic Charbonneau will now give a brief overview of the application.
Okay. Through you, Chair and Council and Mayor McCabe, my name is Dominic Charbonneau and I am Senior Economic Development Officer. I will be giving an overview of the CIP review process that the Economic Development Division has undertaken. So why we are here. The community improvement plans are tools through the Planning Act that let a municipality direct funds to businesses within a specifically designated CIP project area. On November 18, 2024, Council...
I'm sorry, Dominic, can we pause? We just need to close the doors because council cannot hear the presentation. Thank you. Thank you. We can restart, or from where you are, but.
Okay. So in 2024, Council extended the CIP into 2025. Currently within its budget is an annual allocation of $50,000. Council directed staff to complete a review of the Uptown CIP and report back by December 31st, 2025. Now tonight I will summarize what we reviewed, what we heard, and what we're going to be proposing. A little bit of background on the CIP. So since 2016, the CIP has had varying uptake, higher in some years, lower in others, supporting facade improvements towards commercial or designated heritage residential properties, fee relief for studies or fees relating to CIP projects, a CIP commercial improvement loans program, as well as additional grant programs within the Uptown. Some programs were paused due to low uptake, and others as a result of changes to provincial legislation that made them irrelevant. As a result of this council direction, comprehensive review of the program was undertaken to recalibrate the CIP to better align it with today's needs and strategic plan while improving usability for applicants. How we engaged, our team built the updated CIP with input across city divisions. So we're for finance, the Ready team, sustainability, legal, and planning, and with key partners such as the Uptown BIA, Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee, Sustainability Advisory Committee, WEDAC, ministry staff, and the business community. We surveyed past participants directly, and we also ran a 4-week Engage WR survey through the public that promoted on city's website, social media, did targeted ads on the BIA newsletters to capture a broader community perspectives. These methods gave us insight from both a public implementation standpoint and the future priorities of the CIP going forward. From a user experience perspective, overall satisfaction and with the CIP is strong. 88% rated their experience positively, with most finding the documentation process straightforward and the application process simple. Opportunities for improvement were definitely noted from respondents. This looked at focusing on streamlining the application and quoting process for applicants, including improved guidance on how to apply to the program, clearer service standards, more proactive communication with applicants, and increased public awareness of the campaign. These insights informed specific program and process changes in the revised CIP. For program outreach and communications, feedback from our engagement highlighted leveraging city social media channels, direct email and BIA newsletters, and the city website, while maintaining proactive touchpoints from staff. Grants were also identified as a preferred method of program funding. Now, what we heard in terms of investment priorities, aside from existing facade improvement grant program, findings from the questionnaire and public survey for the top priority areas of focus for future investment were closely aligned, with 4 out of the 5 of the top 5 priorities that people could rank being shared across both groups. These included supporting green and sustainable upgrades, such as energy efficiency, heat pumps, etc., reducing costs for permit fees in relation to CIP projects, making buildings and businesses more accessible, as well as offering incentives for affordable housing development. An additional program area that was identified by past participants was also unique, and that includes CEPTED facade improvement grant, facade features, which is crime prevention through environmental design. This will be integrated into the facade improvement grant program and includes things like shatterproof glass and shatterproof windows for businesses. A broader public input also identified business patio supports as an area to consider where possible. And participants also identified additional geographic areas where the CIP could be of use, while Uptown was still identified as the most frequently mentioned area of focus for program concentration and benefit. Just overview of changes of what we're proposing. We will be looking to propose a continuation of the facade improvement grant program for visible improvements and heritage conservation, the major activity grant program, also known as a tax increment grant for office employment or affordable housing development, and the municipal land development opportunities program, which in the past was formerly known as the municipal leadership strategy. This is a policy initiative under the CIP that allows the city to utilize a range of options to acquire or attract key investment and may include public-private ventures. The city may acquire, invest, improve, or dispose of municipal property to support key CIP objectives. Our revised CIP program will be looking to add 3 targeted grants responding directly to the feedback that we received throughout the review process. These include accessibility enhancement, sustainability and climate resilience, as well as commercial interior and vacancy improvements. We'll be reinstating an updated version of the fee and studies grants to reduce soft costs for projects, enable program stacking, capping it at $25,000 per project, removing the parking exemption program due to provincial changes that eliminate parking minimums in major transit station areas, looking to streamline the application and improve plain language guidance for applicants on our web content and in program forms, and use communication channels that were mentioned in previous slides to best promote the program. And these include City Waterloo socials, direct email and BIA newsletters, the city website, and then proactive touchpoints from staff. Boundary expansions can be considered in the future of the CIP. This will ultimately require monitoring of the future program intake with this new CIP, the total amount of program dollars being requested with new programs and their eligible projects, and the budgetary implications on expanding the program boundary. Our new program details are as a result of the proposed most frequently cited needs from our engagement methods. The Accessibility Enhancement Program will look at providing accessibility improvements to commercial or mixed-use commercial buildings for improvements to both interior and exterior parts of the building. Grants will cover 75% of eligible costs up to a maximum of $15,000 per project, and in exceptional cases and at the city's discretion, funding may cover up to 100% of eligible costs. For Sustainability and Climate Resilience Program, this will be looking to encourage sustainable design, energy efficiency, and climate resilience measures in existing uptown commercial and mixed-use commercial buildings. Eligible projects may include retrofits that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase resilience to climate impacts, or reduce resource consumption. Grants will cover 50% of eligible costs up to $10,000 per project. And the Commercial Interior and Vacancy Improvement Program will support the costs of interior construction and renovations to facilitate occupancy of vacant commercial units and to support new businesses to succeed by reducing the impact of startup leasehold improvements and interior retrofits. This will be covering 50% of eligible costs up to $10,000 per project. The proposed update of the CIP is being recommended for approval by staff along with the associated bylaws that are before council tonight. In terms of provincial review and appeals, once bylaws are adopted, a formal notice of decision will be issued and the CIP manual will be circulated to the province. Any major provincial provisions will be impacted or reported back to council. If no appeals are received within 20 days of the formal notice of decision, the CIP comes into full force. Staff will continue to work and finalize application materials, web content, and marketing materials for a spring 2026 launch. As a note, the Uptown CIP project budget is at $536,000, ensuring adequate funding within the project that will help support the project over the next couple of years and during the transition process for this new CIP. Staff will continue to monitor uptake and report to council on an annual basis, and any future funding increases due to increased demand will be requested via future budget processes and through council. Thank you, and I'm open to comments or questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Staff, do you have any questions? It's 9:20, obviously I'm tired. Council, do you have any questions? Sorry, staff, didn't mean to scare you there. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just have a couple points of clarification. Overall, I think that everything that's being proposed in here is pretty fabulous. I mean, what a suite of incentives and what incredible, encouragement for continued stewardship of our uptown commercial area. So I just have a couple of points of clarification. In this document, I noted both the use of the tax increment grant and the tax increment equivalency grant. And so I'm just wondering if you could explain the difference between the two. And then I will follow up with another question or two.
Thank you, through Chair, to Councillor Wright. So the tax increment grant and tax increment equivalency grant, they're the same thing. Yeah.
Thanks. I just got caught up on the acronyms, and so I thought I would ask to make sure I wasn't missing something there. Number two, there are a number of sort of harmonized approaches regarding heritage in the Uptown and McGregor-Albert Heritage Conservation District. And so as a point of clarification, I'm just looking to see, it says the program is intended to provide supports to help owners of heritage properties in this district offset costs of preserving or restoring the exterior heritage features. Does that include residences?
Through Chair to Councillor Wright, yes. So if you are within the CIP boundary within the Heritage District and you're officially a designated heritage, heritage property, you can also apply for CIP. We've had many past applications who have been designated heritage residential homeowners, and they have been able to successfully apply to the program.
Okay, thank you for that. And then if we were to adopt at some point a heritage tax relief, would these incentives in the CIP then stack with that as well in a heritage designation?
Through Chair Rowe to Councillor Wright, at this point in time, they could also apply for it. We have the heritage piece in there as an interim measure through continuation of our past CIP. Where the planning staff are also considering that tax relief program through past council, and the long term, that depending on how that is essentially finalized, it could either continue within the CIP, or it could essentially be in a long-term transition to have all heritage supports just funneled into planning.
Okay, thank you for that. Those were the clarifications I was looking for. And then I just also want to commend staff for thinking holistically about the sustainability incentives as well. What a welcome addition to this, and I'm really encouraged by that. And we did receive a number of letters from the community thanking staff for that inclusion and for listening to those sustainability concerns. Thanks.
Council, any further questions? Mayor McCabe?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for the information, Dominic, and for the team that helped put this together. And I'm glad to see that that some changes were made to the program based on input from the various business owners in terms of like streamlining it and, you know, clear service standards and timelines and not having to get 3 quotes and things like that. So thanks for responding to the business owners on that. And I know we're talking about Uptown. I'm just curious if there's anything we have in place or for businesses that are outside of Uptown, because we know there's, you know, I'm sure everyone could think of a few places in different parts of the city where some TLC would be really helpful. So just if for businesses again that are not in the Uptown area, what kind of incentives are in place for them, or is that something provincial they should look at, or just tell me what's in place for places outside of Uptown?
Through you, Chair Rowe, to Mayor McCabe. To my knowledge at this point in time, I'm not aware of particular programs that they could potentially look into. That is something that we could potentially look at as well. I know that programs right now are a little on and off with changing government and things going on. But in the long term, I mentioned in my presentation, we would be introducing these new programs into the CIP manual. And long term, if based on the interest of applicants and the entire suite of programs that we're looking at introducing, potential future consideration for expanding that out to citywide is something that could be considered, or different areas that have been mentioned, but that ultimately will be a long-term consideration direction from council if that's something they want to do as a new CIP or expanding out our current one.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, sorry.
It's like I'll let Kristen add some more information to that.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the Mayor. There were programs like the My Main Street that we took advantage of and we implemented in the University District, so we will keep our eye out for other provincial programs. It would be something, obviously, that would need to be looked at also through budget process, because the funding capacity to expand to a new CIP area, but it is something, as Dominic mentioned, that staff could look at. Also, I would add that there are a number of save on energy programs that businesses also can participate in, either directly at source or through usually through the energy provider, utility providers. So there's quite good programs for retrofits for a lot of energy efficiency as well. So those would be programs that we can share. We can also do a little bit of a look around to see if there's other things like that Save on Energy that we could point like businesses in other areas to as well, and perhaps create a bit of a resource guide.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And just overall, yeah, as to echo Councillor Wright, really appreciate the thoughtfulness that you've put into these, and it's particularly around the accessibility piece, because I think that's just obviously makes a whole lot of sense for you know, just across the board. So thanks a lot for that.
Any further questions, Council? We have delegates, sorry. All right, thank you so much, Dominic.
Thank you.
I would now like to ask our delegate to come forward, Sandra Callender. Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I apologize. Yes, Paula, forgive me. Paula Saunders, Built Environment Subcommittee Chair, Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee. You have 10 minutes.
It's getting very late and we're very tired, and I don't need 10 minutes. I want to talk about the accessibility part of what Dominic has just proposed. As we all know, I've been before you many times about accessibility, etc., and it's a passion of mine. And I think that looking at the downtown core in Waterloo, the issues are, there's a lot of stores I can't get into. And if you're coming with me, you can't get into it. Parents with baby buggies, seniors have trouble with the one steps. So in my years of doing this, I've often heard from business owners, well, I just can't afford it. It's too expensive. I'd like to do it. So I'm just thrilled that this kind of program may exist, that we can put it forward, that maybe they can do something about these things that don't have to be major. Other things could be major, but this would be a step forward to remove the step so that we could get in. So from the conversation with Dominic and with Amy, it's come very high up on the list of what people have said in the surveys. So I think that it's really wonderful that the city is considering this and that we can step forward and make some changes. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Paula. Council, do you have any questions? Councillor Hamner?
Thank you, Chair, through you to Paula. Not really a question, but just, Paula, I want to publicly commend you for your leadership in this area and your willingness to always be available for questions and to teach people how we can continue to improve our city and our region. I know you're not unique just to Waterloo. You've been helpful throughout the entire region, so thank you for your tenacity and continuing, your perseverance, and good suggestions that you make along the way. We all have learned a lot from you and your expertise.
And it's very important to me, obviously, but as I have probably said to you over and over again, disability is something that can happen to anyone at any time. And in all of our lives, we're going to encounter disability with our spouses, our parents, our grandparents, neighbors, coworkers, whatever. So we just need to look at these things and do them when we can. So.
Thank you. Any further questions, Council? No. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would now like to ask Sandra Collender to please come forward.
My name's Sandra Callender, and I live in Waterloo, uptown Waterloo. And I was very excited to pay my taxes last summer for the reason that I saw a announcement on one of the televisions about the CIP program. And so I started to do some investigation. Unfortunately, I did not realize that last summer and spring there was an invitation to give feedback or comments about the program. And I've only recently learned that I missed that window, but I was encouraged by city staff to come and make my comments this evening. So thank you for your time. I'm a mental health professional and I teach about boundaries. And in doing so, I'd like to say that healthy boundaries can be flexible. I'm one street away from qualifying for this wonderful program. And my understanding is that the boundaries for this program have been in place since 2015 or 2016, so almost 10 years. And I'm here to propose that perhaps other areas of the city or uptown Waterloo could be considered as part of the program. Perhaps it's time for other residents to be able to benefit and participate. And rather selfishly, I don't know, given what's come before me this evening, I feel a little bit self-conscious in putting my case forward. But I do think that after 10 years, perhaps maybe I'd like to encourage a conversation about helping other residents participate in the program and help us with the heavy lifting. I have an older home, and I've been investing quite a bit of money into its upkeep. And I think myself and my neighbors would benefit and appreciate an opportunity to help with some of that heavy lifting. So either maybe offer a second area or have a discussion about where the boundaries currently lay and if that could be expanded. Or I was actually kind of shocked to find that there was a street boundary map. I thought when I saw the program that as a resident of Waterloo that I could just apply. So I was kind of surprised. I know it has to do with a greater plan. It's beyond my comprehension. But I'm just wondering if there's a way to perhaps reconsider what's been in place for 10 years already. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Chair. You raised some excellent points. I know of a business that is just outside of the boundary that would really benefit from this program as well. And I'm wondering also whether you are in a neighborhood that has ever considered heritage designation, like is that like the way McGregor Albert has, where it's a conservation district. I'm not sure which neighborhood you're in uptown, but
I'm in your neighborhood.
well, I
You're
think
my
of all of
counselor.
uptown as being my neighborhood. So
Well, you're my counselor, so.
Yeah.
I understand, I believe so, but I don't know. I don't know.
I will take this back and ask staff to consider some of those boundary considerations, and we can continue this conversation.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to speak to this item? Okay. Seeing none. If there are no more delegations, this formal public meeting is concluded and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. Councillor Wright?
Thank you. I will move to approve this application. So it's Bill 73, Item 13B, Uptown Community Improvement Plan CIP update. Whereas Council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas Council has considered the professional opinions of staff, therefore be it resolved that Council approve report CAO 2025-026, that Council approve the Uptown Community Improvement Plan Manual, included as attachment 1 to report CAO 2025-026, that Council approve and pass the attached Uptown CIP designation bylaw and Uptown CIP adoption bylaw.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bodley, just in time. Does anyone have any comments? No? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting, none. Notice of motion, none. Communications and correspondence, none. Unfinished business, none. Questions? Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. I just had a question to staff, and I'm sorry I've got my back to you here, but just about the changes that the provincial government is proposing regarding conservation authorities. I know it sounds like they're looking, they want to reduce the amount of boards, and they're going to match municipalities up with watersheds, but they're also and they want to do some consultation on this with municipalities, but I'm just curious about, what the potential impacts, I'm worried about what potential impacts may be to local communities like ours, particularly, around floodplain issues and things of that nature. So I'm just wondering if staff have had a chance to, had any initial comments on that, or if we could get some additional information as this piece of legislation moves forward, or process, I should say, moves forward.
Through you, Chair Rowe, to the Mayor. Yes, Mayor, we're actively tracking the changes that the province is proposing to conservation authorities, which I think broadly speaking, are to consolidate the number down to approximately 7, if I have that number correct. The Grand River Conservation Authority would become part of the Lake Erie District, if you will, so it would still be draining to the same body of the Great Lakes that the Grand River watershed does, but it would include all the other watersheds and subwatersheds that are covered by the other conservation authorities in that particular basin of the Great Lakes. My understanding and my first read of it is that they're really not going to change the public protection aspect of the conservation authorities with respect to hazard lands and floodplains. But I think this is more of an administrative effort by the province to look at gaining efficiencies by consolidating the number of conservation authorities across the different municipalities that are included in those watersheds. But yes, there could be impacts that we've got to be mindful of, and as staff continue to follow what the province is proposing, we can certainly report back to council with those impacts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. New business. We need a mover and a seconder to participate in the all-council meeting coming up on Friday, December 19th, 2025 at 2 p.m. at the Township of Woolwich Council Chambers. Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Henmer. All in favor? Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any new business? Councillor Wright.
Just want to encourage everyone to go out to see Wonders of Winter in Waterloo Park. It is always so fun to see those lights come on and see how many people come through the park to see that. I think what Lynn was saying when she was emceeing the launch event on Saturday was that last year we saw 52,000 people come through Waterloo Park for the Wonders of Winter. It takes an enormous amount of effort from volunteers, but also our fire staff and park staff and so many others. So just a big shout out to City of Waterloo staff who have contributed. But absolutely, this is such an incredible many-decade effort by volunteers. So big shout out to them. Thanks.
Councillor Vasek.
Through you, Councillor Rowe, a suggestion to shop at the Button Factory's holiday market. It's an opportunity to shop local and support arts and culture. Spread the word.
Any further new business? Oh, yes, that's right. The tree lighting is this Friday evening starting at 6 o'clock. Yes, please come out to the tree lighting. Lots of fun. Awesome. Okay, enactment of bylaws. Moved by Councillor Bodley. Seconded by Mayor McCabe. All in favor? Adjournment. Councillor Bodley again. Councillor Vasek is the seconder. All in favor? And we are done. Thank you, everyone. Before 10 o'clock.